This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate first part of What If Could Naruto Awaken Devil Sword Yamato. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Demons don't cry. Devils don't see cry. I, sniff, W won't, sniff, see cry, a child whispered, tears welling up in his lovely blue eyes. Rain had matted his silver hair to his head, his clothing was bloody and ripped, he was kneeling over a body. But he couldn't have been older than 5. The little boy's favorite thing in the world was the woman's body in a pool of her own blood. She lay lifeless. His little body was bruised and aching. A big katana protruded from the ground a few feet away, and his right arm felt like it was on fire. Blood stained the blade crimson, and the blood seemed to creep eerily down the blade and into the ground. He didn't care, though it wasn't about the sword, his aching body, or even his arm, which now radiated a strange blue and appeared more ethereal than a man's. No, she, the person he loved, was all that mattered to him. The voice seemed to come from everywhere around him. Might controls everything. Without power you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself. Before he passed out from exhaustion, it was the last sound he heard. Power, give me more power, was the voice that echoed as my arm changed from that day on. In any case, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm preparing to pass a ninja test. Why? In order for me to kill shit without getting caught. I'm a little, different. I'm not sure what to call my abilities. A curse, a gift, or a bloodline, but it doesn't really matter. However you choose to refer to them, know that they are useful in the battle against demons, and I will stop at nothing to eliminate all of those jerks. They took away from me someone I truly cared about. You see what was done to her? She was killed by them. But to make things a little clearer, let me start from the beginning. Flashback. The third Hokage, also known as Sarutobi the Sandaime, is also referred to as the Professor due to his extensive jutsu knowledge and his skillful application of all of them in battle. But despite his strength, skill, and he was still cooped up at his desk going through papers. He needed a caregiver for a 4-year-old boy, but none of his skills could help him find it. This boy was none other than Uzumaki Naruto, the Kyuubi's selected container, so it should have been simple. He was seen by many as the creature that was trapped inside of him. They disregarded the boy's final request to be treated like a hero by the 4th Hokage by using the boy as a scapegoat for their issues. They actually did the exact opposite. Once more, he was searching through a pile of files of people who could adopt and raise a young boy. He knew they still harbored resentment toward the fox and that it would be perfect for an accident to happen, so he had already thrown out the majority of them. They must have assumed he was elderly or foolish. He yelled, "This is ridiculous," and slammed his fists into his desk with such fury that he splintered the sturdy wood beneath him and scattered papers. Wait, his hand briefly blurred, catching a piece of paper that had caught his attention in midair. I'm curious as to how I missed this one. A civilian chef who moved here just before the attack. No family left, but not because of the fox. Suitable space. No resentment toward Naruto for what is contained within him. And a family friend. She is flawless. He called while still examining her file. Inu. He heard the wind sprinting ahead of him. Yes, Hokage-sama, the third said, looking up from his paper to see a silver-haired Enbu guard wearing a dog mask in front of him. Still thinking deeply, he said, would you please get Uzumaki Naruto for me? There is someone I'm sure he'd be happy to meet. According to the man, yes, Hokage-sama, then dissolved in a leaf whirl. With a sigh, the third stood up to be certain. I will need to observe them for a few days. He then left his office with sandaled feet, making no sound as they carried him to his destination, saying, if there are no accidents, I'll leave them alone. Devils aren't emotional. Naruto was enjoying his day. The boy was humming a cheerful tune as he walked down the street. Initially, he was given a complimentary bowl of ramen for being the first customer to arrive at a new stand by chance. It was one of the best things he had ever eaten, and it tasted fantastic. He dabbed at the saliva that was trickling down his cheeks. Nobody had said anything hurtful to him thus far today. There were no icy looks. They simply ignored him, and that was okay. Without the parents yelling at him and dragging their kids away, he even had the opportunity to play with some other kids. He then exacted revenge on the jerk who had defrauded him a few days prior without being apprehended. He laughed at the thought of shouting, "Pervert," at a man by the hot springs. It's amazing what that can do. That guy had no idea what had hit him, and he's right. He overcharged me for groceries a few days ago, and now he's got the balls to go to the women's hot spring. He laughed happily as he went on, not paying any attention to his destination. Yes, I'm having a good day. The young boy rubbed his nose and exclaimed, oof, ow, that hurt. What did I hit? He looked up slowly and saw a man with silver hair wearing a dog mask. Looks like a ninja. Oh, all right, Naruto. You can get out of this one because you've done it before. Be smooth and play it cool. He inhaled his soothing breath and released it gradually. He shouted defiantly, "I didn't do it, I swear. Okay, I got this." For a brief moment, the Anbu's mask-covered eyes seemed to pierce right through him. Naruto began to perspire. In a bored tone, he stated, "The Hokage wants to see you, so I came to get you." Wiping his forehead, Naruto thought, "Phew, that was a close one, I nearly thought." He went on, "But if there is anything you'd like to confess." Naruto chuckled uneasily, "Hee, of course not, Anbu-san, I haven't done anything all day. I just happened to see someone being beat mercilessly by a group of angry women in towels. You wouldn't have anything to do with that, would you?" He drawled out with a bored voice. "Of course not, Anbu-san. He must have just got caught doing something bad." He sighed, "Please, just buy it. I guess, anyhow, accompany me to the Hokage." He was aware, but he still found it amusing, even though that guy had it coming. "All right, lead the way, Anbu-san." Wow, what a near miss, but the good times go on. Devils aren't emotional. You see, that is why I need you to take care of him. The orphanage is being biased towards him, and I don't trust many others to actually take care of him. And the ones I do trust don't have the time to watch him. I also thought that since you were a good friend of Kushina, you wouldn't have any anger toward him. The third stopped and looked at the woman next to him. Although she wore her light brown hair in a ponytail, her angelic face was framed by a few loose strands. Her gentle brown eyes were filled with nothing but goodwill. Her modest sundress and apron only served to accentuate her attractiveness. Even the majority of kunoichi would be enamored with her figure. Observing no questionable behavior, he proceeded. "Of course his opinion matters as well, so if you agree we will also see if he accepts." After listening patiently and remaining silent the entire time, the woman finally said, "I would be happy to look after him. Hokage-sama, I could use the company and the help. Besides, I always wanted a son to look after." The third gave a nod of approval. "Will you now be accepted by Naruto?" Inu appeared alongside a passenger who was now in awe of how they arrived as a whirl of leaves kicked up. Naruto appeared to pause briefly before attacking with full force. "Whoa! Anbu-san, how'd you do that? That was awesome. I mean, we were just standing there, you moved your hands and poof, we're here. Can you teach me how to do that, please? Please, please, please." Inu appeared to consider it, and Naruto's eyes glistened with optimism. "Maybe," began the Anbu. Naruto's exuberant "yes" reverberated throughout the room. A victory dance then started. He concluded, "When you're older." Naruto, who had been joyfully bouncing around the room, fell headfirst to the ground. The third said, "Naruto, please sit down." This caught the attention of the young child, who was now nursing a big bump on his head, mumbling to himself and shedding funny tears, unaware of the female occupant of the room. The boy, whose hopes had been dashed by the Anbu, proceeded to throw himself in the vacant chair. Naruto was startled out of his reverie by the third clearing his throat. The Hokage now had Naruto's undivided focus. "Naruto, I called you here to ask you a very important question. The woman next to you has heard of your problems with the orphanage and has proposed a remedy to the situation." Naruto had no idea where this was headed. Additionally, bringing up the orphanage brought back memories of less than ideal aspects of his brief visit. He was astounded by the woman's beauty when he finally noticed her standing next to him. "With someone like me, what would she want? So what question do you want to ask?" he asked the Hokage, catching himself staring. The woman decided that now would be a good moment to talk. The words, "Naruto, I'm Kairi, and I was a good friend of your mother," caused Naruto's eyes to widen. If Naruto's eyes were large before, they were enormous now. "And after hearing your problem, I've decided that I can adopt you, that is, if you want." Over time, Naruto was thinking, this lovely, attractive woman wanted to adopt him. Is this a joke? No, Gigi couldn't have done that to him, could he? No, why would he stat now if Gigi had never hurt him before? How can I be sure she won't end up like all the other cruel people, even though I want a family? The boy's difficulties were evident to the others. Should he take this chance and risk getting hurt again, or should he pass it up and risk losing it forever? Despite their best efforts, they were unable to assist him. He had to make this decision on his own. It was not long before the boy's struggle intensified. His eyes were slowly filling with tears. "I no longer want to be by myself. I'm sick of being the only one without a family. It's unfair. Will she be any different from the people who curse me when I'm not looking and call me a monster and a demon?" The boy spoke up after he had watched him struggle and try to work out his emotions with his hair now hiding his eyes. Kairi turned to face him and said, "I just have one question, just one." She asked softly, so as not to frighten him, "What is it?" There was nothing silly or humorous about the tears that were streaming down the boy's face. When he finally looked up, he was attempting to suppress these genuine tears, which were filled with more pain than any child should experience. "Will you love me?" The woman rose from her seat and knelt before him. She hugged him tenderly while gazing into his teary eyes. She whispered in his ear, "I will love you like my own." Naruto gave her a fierce hug in return, as though he was afraid she would vanish if he let go for the first time in a long time. His mask fell off, and he sobbed freely from fear, grief, and most importantly, happiness at having found a family at last. As the scene played out in front of them, the Sandaime and Anbu remained silent. Naruto and his new mother were soon on their way to their new home after all the necessities had been taken care of. Devils aren't emotional. The months that came after were ideal. Kairi was the intelligent, compassionate, and attractive mother Naruto had always fantasized about. She was also kind. Instead of getting upset when he did something incorrectly, she would simply correct him with a smile, and in order to see that smile, Naruto tried his hardest to be the best son he could be. In fact, she had managed to throw him a party at her restaurant on his birthday. There was food, gifts, and most importantly, friends. Old man Tucci and his daughter Ayame from the Ichiraku ramen bar were present, as was the Hokage. It was fantastic that Kairi was even able to persuade the parents of kids his own age to come play with him in order to disprove the negative impression that his roommates had of him. He had made sure to treat them with kindness. Hinata, Sakura, Shino, Choji, Shikamaru, Ino, and Kiba were among the names. He even learned he was unaware of Kairi's method, but he didn't give a damn. Even though they weren't compelled to attend, they were glad to be there. Naruto had the happiest day of his life. Everything was flawless. Unfortunately, it was all coming to an end. Devils aren't emotional. Sarutobi was troubled because he was hearing more and more stories about smaller demon battles. The attacks were becoming more frequent, which was concerning even though the lesser demons themselves weren't shocking. After all, there were animals like the nine-tailed fox that prowled the land. Certain villages and travelers were in grave danger if they lacked shinobi or any other kind of defense. Devils aren't emotional at the moment. Kairi and Naruto were on their way back from an outer village northeast of Konoha that had certain essentials for the restaurant. Only a few months have passed since Kairi first adopted Naruto, and if someone were to see them, they wouldn't think the child was adopted. The mother and son appeared to be just like any other. Naruto heard a strange, inhuman-sounding laughter while he was assisting with camp setup. Then he noticed them. They appeared out of nowhere. Some of these ugly, bulbous creatures had a leg with the blade, while others had an arm with a crude scythe. Before they began attacking him, they appeared a little slow and moved strangely. His small form found it difficult to avoid all of them as they appeared to jump and attack in intricate formations. They had even succeeded in encircling him. He heard a sound that frightened him more than any laugh these creatures could make, just when he thought things couldn't get any worse. The sound was Kairi screaming. He had forgotten that she had gone to replenish their canteens with the nearby steam. While he was attempting to avoid these monsters, she was in danger. He charged the closest monster with a scythe on its leg, putting all concerns about his personal safety aside. It should take longer to recover if knocked down because it is unbalanced with its weapon. His analyst was impetuous and impulsive. A few others like it were in front of the closest one with a blade on its leg. He needed all the momentum he could get, so he pushed his legs harder. The monsters had not yet moved, either because they were amused by his retaliation or curious about what he was doing. It gave Naruto the opportunity he required without even reducing his speed. Naruto slammed his right fist into the creature. He was able to knock the creature off its feet and into a few enemies behind it, either by strength or momentum. The result was that they all fell to the ground. Naruto stepped on a few of them as he flew by. He sped up when he heard another scream. He might have noticed the slight blue glow emanating from Kairi's right arm, which he used to punch the monster for an opening, if he hadn't been so anxious about getting there. Trees passed by him at amazing speeds, appearing to be a blur. The strain he was putting on his legs and lungs caused them to burn and scream in protest. Po, he thought, what was that? But was interrupted by a third scream. It sounded more frightened, more desperate. He had to move quickly. At last, he emerged into a clearing through the trees. He only followed his instincts when he saw Kairi surrounded by those monsters and already appearing a little scratched up. He yelled, "Leave her alone," and gave the person who was about to attack her a powerful punch. Apparently to the surprise of the other creatures, it flew into a group and exploded. Naruto hardly had time to turn before one of them swiped at him, saying, "Naruto, watch out." Time slowed out of the corner of his eye. He saw another lunge as the blade on its arm attempted to split him in two as he had moved out of range of the weapon. "Oh no, you don't!" In a sudden outburst, he grabbed the monster by the leg, spun him around, struck those nearby, and threw it back at a group of them. It seemed to come naturally to him. It was only then that he became aware of the blue glow emanating from his arm. Everything appeared to come to a halt. Even the creatures appeared to be afraid of his arm after recognizing it. Then all of a sudden, Kairi, Naruto, and the creatures were blinded by a brilliant flash of light that came from his arm. They all stood in wonder when they were able to see again. Despite still having a human shape, Naruto's arm appeared more demonic due to its dark reddish armor and the blue skin beneath it, which replaced the skin at the hand and was visible through the armor's cracks. "Give me more power, please," as the voice replayed in his head. Naruto held it in agony. After they had all recovered from their shock, the creatures realized he posed a threat and planned to eliminate it, with some leaping into the air and others rushing him from the ground. They all attacked at once. The frozen moment when Naruto saw the voice, he frantically searched for it. "You are not going to die, not when you were one of my descendants. You got the power, it's in your blood, and all you have to do is use it." He was taller than Naruto and was dressed in a dark blue shirt, black pants, and a big light blue coat. His gray eyes seemed to pierce Naruto's own blue orbs, and his stark white hair was slicked back neatly. He took a quick look at Kairi before turning back to Naruto. "Are you or are you not one of my blood? Use your power to destroy this trash. After all, you want to save her, don't you?" he asked. He could use anything to help him defeat these things. Naruto thought for a moment he needed to keep Kairi safe. Finally, with a determined expression in his eyes, Naruto declared, "I'll do whatever it takes." The man produced a long katana and extended it in a horizontal position. Naruto said, "You see this sword, young one?" and nodded. "This is the sword of a great devil, and only another of that devil's blood can wield it. Will you accept the power to crush your enemies, even if it means becoming just like them?" Would Naruto become quiet? Protect Kairi if he has the strength to save her with that sword, but he would turn into a devil. A demon. He saw Kairi's terrified face, fearing that he would die. He watched him wait patiently for a response, then turned back to the man who had remained in his place. "I accept my blood and my power," he said, looking at Kairi once more before turning away. "I just want the power to protect her. I don't care if I become a demon." The man's strong gray eyes studied him, held out the sword and nodded. "By accepting the blood of your ancestors I bestow upon you, Yamato, draw your blade, accept our power, and become stronger than any other." With trembling hands, Naruto grabbed the blade from the man's grasp. The man then vanished, leaving behind no smoke or leaves. He didn't have time to consider it, though, because things were starting to come back to life in his left hand. The blade of the man's sword. No, his sword. Let out a dull ring as he leapt to his feet, whistling through the air. Yamato left only a flash of light behind it as it moved at a breakneck speed. He had already eliminated half of the demons before they returned to their regular pace. Now they were using all of their resources to attack. One came from above. He cut off the creature's torso after bringing Yamato up to block the slash and knocking it off balance. He then used his right hand to grab at the creature that was attempting to approach him, but it was a larger hand that was completely blue, appeared to be spiritual, but had the same shape. "It makes no difference. To keep her safe, I'll turn into a demon." With that, he grabbed the creature still and slammed it into the ground, crushing its body in the process. It seemed instinct took over entirely. He changed as he battled like the man in blue. His hair turned brilliant silver instead of its sun-kissed gleam. His body gradually changed to become more combat-ready. Additionally, his blue eyes appeared to be glowing with unrealized potential. An enemy's groin is cut in half by an upward slash leaping into the air after the slash's force, using gravity as his weapon. He grabbed one and pulled it up to him before smashing it back into the ground. One is split cleanly in two pieces by a downward slash as it falls. Three of them are cut through by a horizontal slash, and one is grabbed and smashed into the ground. They had no chance of dying at the hands of Yamato or his demonic arm, and the carnage went on. It seemed like Naruto had done this before. During the entire battle his demonic arm seemed to obey his commands flawlessly, and Yamato felt like an extension of his own soul. At last, he sliced through the final one. His muscles burned and he was out of breath, but he and Kairi were still alive when he turned around. Kairi's face was grinning at him, but then a look of surprise appeared as a blade protruded from her abdomen. No. He moved in a blur, appearing next to the monster, grabbing it with his demonic arm and smashing it into the ground once, twice, and 3 times before mercilessly crushing it in his grip. The pain was forgotten, and the adrenaline-fueled energy returned full force. He calmed himself upon seeing the wound. He was unsure of how, but he knew that the blade had passed through without striking any internal organs. He swiftly bandaged the wound after tearing his blood-stained t-shirt. Yamato was mysteriously sheathed and by his side as he pushed toward their destination in a dead sprint, using all of his strength and willpower. Hold on, Mom, Konoha isn't far. He already had her on his back. Her blood was already leaking through his flimsy bandages. He had no idea how long it had been, but he did know that she was rapidly fading and that it had begun to rain. Hold on, Mom, we're almost there, hold on. Tears and rain were pouring down his face, and his silver hair was matted to his head. He stumbled after feeling his foot snag. He saw her land a few feet away as they crashed to the ground. Yamato also flew into the air, piercing the ground after falling out of its sheath. Help! Somebody help us. He was heaving himself up even as he screamed for help. She was rushed to. Her breathing was labored and the blood had seeped through her bandages entirely. He attempted to pick her up, but his strength was failing him. Come on mom, we're almost there. When he heard a noise and saw two Chunin appear next to him, he exclaimed, someone, anyone help us. His heart leapt with hope. After Kairi needed help and these guys were just standing there staring, Naruto became hysterical. You gotta help her, she's dying, we got attacked. Don't just stand there, carry her, teleport her, get a fucking medic, do something, said Naruto. These Chunin were battle-hardened and knew the woman would not survive the journey, either physically or spiritually. They could see it in her eyes, and even she knew it. As the rain poured on and around Naruto, tears filled his eyes. He pleaded, do something please. Naruto, was her feeble voice, and he immediately turned to Kairi, rushing to her side and placing her head in his lap. She reached up and stroked his face with the back of her hand, saying, Naruto, I'm sorry, you tried your best. We both did, but I can't make it. In order to warm the icy hand, he placed his head inside hers and held it in his. I wanted to surprise you. I know how you wanted to be Hokage, so I signed you up for the academy and paid for it. Be strong, Naruto, if not for yourself, for me. It hurts knowing that I'm leaving you alone again, and I'm so sorry. Now they were both crying. He muttered, don't leave me, mom, please. Her grip then weakened and went limp. Naruto-kun, did I ever tell you that I love it when you call me that? It makes me feel great being your mother. She halted and slowed her breathing and she closed her eyes, never to look at the outside world again. Mom, mom, mom. He clenched his fists so tightly that blood dripped from them. He bowed his head and did his best not to cry. From behind Naruto, Sandamin said, let it out, Naruto is okay to cry. Demons don't cry. Devils don't cry. I, sniff, W won't, sniff, C cry. As he held her body close, he began to cry bitterly and shed tears of sorrow. His little body was bruised and aching. A big katana protruded from the ground a few feet away, and his right arm felt like it was on fire. Blood was crimson on the blade, and it appeared to creep eerily down the blade and onto the floor. He didn't care, though not the sword, his aching body, or even his arm, which now radiated a strange blue that seemed more demonic than a man's. No, she, the person he loved, was all that mattered to him. Mom, the voice seemed to come from everywhere around him. Might controls everything. Without power you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself. Before he passed out from exhaustion, it was the last sound he heard. Devils aren't emotional. A few days later, Naruto is at Kairi Uzumaki's funeral with other families, including the Hyuga and Ichiraku ramen stand families. Naruto couldn't bring himself to cry for the past several days. He had sobbed himself to sleep. The thick sunglasses were the only thing concealing that fact. He remained motionless. He was staring at that stone while wearing black clothing and a sling over his bandaged arm. Kairi Uzumaki is here. Everyone loves you. Greetings, friend. Hey Ali, above all. Mother beside him stood the third. He said abruptly, Oji-san, when does the academy start? The third questioned, perplexed. In a few days. Naruto, why? Because I need more power. This will never happen again, and I need someone to grab my sword for me. After all, might controls everything. Without power you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself. Sighing, the Hokage said, very well, Naruto, I'll see what I can do. Final flashback. After all, no one needs to know about my trump card so soon anyway. Naruto stood in front of the academy entrance wearing a large black trench coat and baggy black pants. He didn't wear shirts because they always got messed up when he used his powers, and most people his age thought the seal on his stomach was a tattoo. His hair was disheveled and worn down, and he had his right arm bandaged up to the shoulder. Might controls everything. Without power you cannot protect anything, let alone yourself. He then kicked down the door and entered, saying, I need more power, to protect the ones I love. A devil has been born, a descendant of Sparta has been exposed, and he is prepared to kick some ass. Beside his silver-haired assistant, a young man with a scar on the bridge of his nose sat quietly at his desk. A quick look would suggest that he was finishing up some paperwork, but a more astute observer would see that he was quietly watching the students. The silver-haired assistant said, this year, we have a lot of genin hopefuls, don't we, Iruka-sensei? Yeah, I noticed there seemed to be more this year, Mizuki. I only hope I've taught them well enough to pass both my test and their Junin senseis. Observe carefully. We will have to make teams not only based on academics but also on how they have interacted in class. As they continued their excited chatter, the students themselves were blissfully unaware. Some were exhausted from cramming all night, while others were boasting that they would pass with ease. Mizuki, you can go ahead and start roll now, Iruka said, turning to his assistant after concluding his observation. Sure. The man said as he stood up. Mizuki made an agonizingly poor attempt to draw the class's attention. Iruka-sensei, a little assistance? With a slightly embarrassed expression, he asked. After chuckling to himself, Iruka stood up and inhaled deeply, saying, "Quiet down," making use of his formidable demon head jutsu. Iruka gave Mizuki a friendly shoulder pat before going back to his seat, and as Mizuki called roll, Iruka made a mental list of the most promising pupils. Suddenly, there seemed to be silence. The Ino Shika Cho trio appears intriguing. They're already close, and their methods of supporting one another should make teamwork easy for them. I might assemble Hinata, Shino, and Kiba into a tracking team. Kiba might help Hinata and Shino come out of their shells while they help him relax. All that Inuzuka pride could lead to his death. Who's left? Sasuke is the year's rookie, so I'll pair her with him to balance them out. Sakura, who isn't from any clan, has the book smarts to pass the test, and hopefully will have a Junin sensei that will make her more useful in the field. Wham! Abruptly, the door flew across the room at a speed that would have embarrassed some ninja, and it crashed into the far wall. Naruto walked in calmly, absently scratching at the birthmarks on his cheeks that looked like whiskers, and he took the closest seat, kicking his legs up on the desk. Since he is dead last, I really have no choice but to place Naruto with Sasuke and Sakura. I know the death of his mother hit him hard, but the kid constantly trains himself into the ground. If he actually tried in class, he would do well. It was Naruto's turn after Mizuki concluded roll call and explained the exams, which would begin with written and then practical. The tests were distributed and completed shortly after, leaving the students to perform a simple bunchen. Some children emerged wearing their new headband, while others simply left with dissatisfied expressions, and some even started crying. Mizuki called out, his head sticking out of the test room, "Uzumaki, Naruto." "Naruto?" He looked up from his paper and called once more. Ignoring the irate Chunin, Naruto walked by and said, "Yay, I'm up, damn it, don't get your panties in a twist." "Naruto, you must create at least 3 basic bunchen and," Iruka started. Naruto said, "Yay, I know," and after completing the appropriate hand seals, 3 flawless clones appeared beside him. "You pass, Naruto. Excellent, congratulations on becoming a Kohona Genin. Here is your headband. However, if you were capable of flawless jutsu, why didn't you take the test sooner?" With a deeply perplexed expression, Iruka asked his pupil. As he walked out, Naruto tied his headband to his left arm and shrugged, saying, "Didn't feel like it." Had he looked, he would have noticed a glint of evil in Mizuki's eyes. As usual, he was met with glares, whispers, and the shuffle of people eager to get out of his way as he walked outside, navigating through the large crowd of parents there to congratulate their children on becoming Genins. Naruto's heart ached a little as he watched a student rush up to embrace a woman who must have been his mother, clenching his bandaged hand absently while smothering the sadness back down. As he glared at 2 women in a corner who he heard discussing him, Naruto thought, "I have better things to do than dwell on the past." They stood motionless as he unleashed directed killing intent at them, staring into their terrified eyes before letting them go and leaving. "That'll make the bitches think twice next time," Naruto said. When released, the 2 women sat trembling and crying from the aftereffects of the mental assault. Seeing one's own horrific death will do that to a person suddenly. Their legs could no longer bear their weight, and they fell to the ground. Devils aren't emotional at this point. The training ground was illuminated by the setting sun, which made it appear like a war zone with trees destroyed and deep slash marks and craters all over it. With his coat off, exposing his bare chest and showcasing muscles that would make a girl drool, Naruto was hunched over on one of the few remaining patches of green, trying to catch his breath. His right arm was still bandaged in case someone interrupted him. "It's about time I got it right now, it just needs a name." He straightened up and inhaled deeply. He turned to where he felt Mizuki and said, "You can come out now, Mizuki." "How are you, Naruto? How did you recognize me?" With a big scroll on his back, the Chunin asked, grinning, as he emerged from the shade of a tree. Staring him in the eye, Naruto remarked, "You're not very good at hiding your killing intent. Judging from those weapons, you came here for a purpose, so drop the nice guy act." Mizuki's expression darkened. "I came here to destroy you. Demon, I wanted to simply take the scroll and go, but I want to get back at you for everything you did to me." "Oh no, poor Mizuki, I hope my small antics haven't left you feeling sore." Naruto laughed and continued, "Besides, they couldn't have been that bad, could they? You should have known better than to mess with me. You don't realize how awful it was." With a deranged expression in his eyes, Mizuki yelled, "The tricks just kept coming day after day, repeatedly for years. I was the village's laughing stock. It only got worse and you were solely to blame. Every single one of those tricks was put on by you even though I didn't catch you. I knew it had to be you." "Yeah, Whatever you know that you shouldn't hold other people responsible for your life's issues. Naruto made a deep mocking bow and said, and I see you're a traitor now as was as a total loser, so that means I can have fun taking you down. Should we dance? After carefully setting the scroll aside, Mizuki launched one of his enormous shuriken at Naruto to begin the battle. Yamato batted the oversized weapon away without causing any harm, but the time it gave him was enough for Mizuki to complete his string of hand seals. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu, he exclaimed, releasing a bullet of flames unimpressed. Naruto simply leapt into the air, over the ball of fire, only to have another follow him into the air. As he prepared Yamato in its sheath, he thought, just who does he think I am, some amateur? Judgment cut, he said calmly. Yamato swung out of its sheath with lightning speed, slicing through the air with a lightning-fast slash before snapping back into its sheath. The fireball appeared to be struck by an arc of light, and when Yamato clicked back into its sheath, it simply burst into embers. Not bad for its first use against a real opponent, he said. How did he do that? Mizuki asked, not knowing what had happened to the fireball, but moving as soon as he had launched the attack and taking a quick look back to the fireball's origin to see a massive trench slash carved in the ground. After a gentle landing, Naruto extended his arm with his thumb pointing downward and made a throat-slitting motion with his bandaged thumb, saying, that was pathetic. You can do better than that, can't you? With Yamato sheathed on his right side and his left hand on the hilt, Naruto assumed a defensive stance while Mizuki gaped at how nearly he was hit by the attack. After more hand seals, one Mizuki cried out, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and turned into 5-3 clones, then lunged directly at him. Illusions? Naruto asked, observing the dirt clouds raised by their footsteps. No, that's solid. How does the loser know a move like that? He asked. While the first two arrived at him simultaneously, they took different routes and lunged in different directions. One quickly separated his torso from his legs, while the second, who had attacked his blind spot, was stabbed in the stomach and had the sword ripped through his side. Both bodies, or what remained of them, vanished in tiny puffs of smoke before they hit the ground, and the third Mizuki clone appeared to pause for a moment before continuing its charge. You thought he would notice that tactic, didn't? The Mizuki lunged for Naruto's head with his sword, clung to the blade, and then began to glow. Deibakuha Bunshin. It yelled. Naruto quickly let go of his sword and leapt away, saying, never mind. The next explosion threw his sword into a tree trunk, and as he hit the ground, he thought, fucker, that was sneaky, I like that. Demon, you're exactly where I want you. With their massive shuriken poised to kill, the final two Mizuki lunged at him. Naruto sighed as he raised his right arm to protect himself from the blow, saying, don't really have a choice. Oh well, not like he is going to be able to tell anyone after I'm done beating the stupid into him. Instead of cutting through as Mizuki had intended, the weapons found their mark and, instead of causing blood to spill, the bandages burst into a brilliant blue shockwave of power. Subsequently, Naruto roared back, using a demonic arm swing that dispersed the clone and threw Mizuki back into a tree, his weapon shattering from the power unleashed in the swing, and pushing the two back with monstrous strength that a student fresh out of the academy shouldn't have had. The sun was nearly gone, and the darkness seemed to intensify the evil glow of Naruto's arm as the boy stood over him, and Mizuki looked up in terror at the creature in front of him. Which are you? He was frightened enough to stammer out, searching for a way out. Come on, Mizuki, Naruto said, glancing at his glowing arm. You were the one who kept calling me a demon. How come your pants look so bad? Fearful that the demon is capable of self-defense? The boy looked no worse than when he had begun the fight, but Mizuki knew he was exhausted and nearly out of chakra, and he knew he had to finish this and get away in one move, so he started to carefully and slowly set his ninja wire in place. Naruto noticed the desperate gesture as he looked up from staring at his arm. Look, Mizuki, I'm feeling giving now that I've mastered my new move. Come on boy, come on, make it count. He clapped his hands as though addressing a very foolish dog. I'll make fun of you and give you one last chance. Without wasting any time, Mizuki threw ninja wire from his hands and wrapped it around Naruto, tying him to the tree he had been leaning against before with a forceful tug and a leap into the air. Mizuki put all of his chakra into his finisher because he was done trying to get away and was just interested in seeing this monster dead. He brought the wires to his mouth and yelled his technique. Ryuka no Jutsu. Directing a terrible stream of fire in the direction of Naruto's restrained form. The fire was so powerful that it burned through the tree itself, and the tree moaned as it fell to the ground, but Naruto did not even scream when it engulfed him. Instead, he simply watched as the flames met him. I did it. Mizuki squatted, panting, staring into the darkness where Naruto had been, but there was no sound, no movement. I did it. I destroyed the demon, Mizuki said with a laugh. I'll be a hero. Mizuki's scream of pain interrupted his joyful cries. He collapsed to the ground, gazing first at the blue, ethereal blade in the ground a few feet away, and then at the bloody stump that had once been his leg. But. Naruto said, not bad, I think I'm kind of impressed, as he landed in front of. I take that back, what use is a powerful attack like that when you don't make sure that you get the real opponent? But I'll cut you some slack and give you a D- for effort. Mizuki let out a frantic cry, but how? I trapped you, there's no way you could have gotten out. I know, not bad huh? Your handy little technique helped out a lot, still gonna have to work out some of the kinks though. Then it dawned on him. Kage Bunshin, after only witnessing my technique once, he was able to replicate it and use it against me in the middle of the battle. Without a Sharingan, that ought to be nearly impossible. Mizuki was devastated to see Naruto's undamaged form. He was left with nothing. You were toying with me, weren't you? Naruto pointed to the blue blade in the ground that was beginning to scatter and remarked, you got me. Mizuki-sensei. Can't get past you, can I? You should feel honored though, after all I used my newest technique on you. Naruto remarked thoughtfully, I like the term, summoned sword, for it, but I guess it doesn't matter with the surprise and all. I'm also still trying to make the damn things explode too. I'll get it eventually, but this is enough to keep you here till the old man shows up. All your chakra is used up, and even if you did have enough to move, let alone walk, you only have one leg, and of course there is still the fact that I'm here, the child said with pride. But I do have one question. If you think I'm a demon, what the hell's up with all the fire jutsus? Kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? Mizuki said somberly, you really are the Kyuubi no Yuko then? Naruto responded, there is a difference. I'm a devil, not the demon. I am the bad guy, and he attacks me first? Perhaps my antics caused more mental damage than I initially believed. Mizuki had nothing left to lose because he was aware that he had been defeated. He was disabled. His chakra was depleted, and he sensed the Hokage's chakra approaching. He was about to be tortured and killed or killed himself. He would therefore aim for a low blow. Ironically, Naruto was walking to get his sword, which was stranded in a tree a short distance away. Must have been traveling more than I initially believed. Then Mizuki made his final sloppy move. That explains how your mom died then. Naruto froze at those words. Anyone could tell that was a sensitive subject because the question came out harshly. What the hell are you talking about? It's clear, isn't it? You killed her, Mizuki screamed at his motionless body. When Naruto finished speaking, he turned. That's a fucking lie. Take that back. His eyes had lost their teasing shine and were now as hard and frigid as glaciers. Even though Naruto was dead, Mizuki was horrified by the murderous intent that was coming out of him. He said, I bet you had fun torturing and raping her, seeing the life leave her eyes as she died, you damn foe. But before he could finish, Naruto was on top of him, punching him repeatedly in the face with his demonic hand while his human hand held his hair. With a look of unadulterated hatred on his face, Naruto repeatedly slammed his fist into Mizuki's face as he beat her viciously. I'd never hurt her, never, despite seeing the blood smeared on the man's hand and Mizuki's face, feeling the man's skull begin to crack from his blows, and ignoring Mizuki's cries of pain that changed to cries for mercy and then to a man pleading for death, he continued. Furious, Naruto stopped punching him, took hold of his head, twisted his fractured body around him, and let him fly across the clearing. She loved me. Don't you ever talk about her. You hear me? He exclaimed. He then tore Yamato from the tree it was sheathed in and threw the sword after him with all of his strength, but it wasn't enough. 5 ethereal blades were called forth one after the other to follow Yamato. Mizuki struck the tree hard. The impact sent a shiver down his spine, but oddly, he was unable to sense anything when a web of fissures emerged from where his body joined the tree. Everything simply went numb. Yamato exploded from the bark on the other side, dripping blood from the tip, and stabbed him deep into the middle of his chest before he could even hit the ground. He was too exhausted to scream in agony or even in terror as the blue blades pursued him. A thunk, a thunk, a thunk. His stomach was deeply stabbed by 4 blades as the final blade struck him. He raised his head and life blood poured from his mouth. His head was easily severed by the blade, which also brought down the tree. His neck erupted in a fountain of blood. The blade was buried deep in Yamato's chest, so it missed his hilt and instead pooled on the ground. When the Hokage entered the clearing with 4 Anbu following him, he saw this scene. One of them whispered to him faintly, "Damn, overkill much?" Sarutobi approached Naruto, who was approaching the body himself, while 2 went to examine it and the other 2 went to get the scroll. He asked as he walked beside Naruto, who didn't falter, "Did you do this, Naruto?" With a sickening squelch, Naruto stopped in front of the body and simply stared at him before reaching forward and yanking Yamato away from Mizuki's unquestionably dead body with the summoned swords already scattered. They let the body fall to the ground, with nothing left to hold it up after sheathing his sword and gracefully throwing the blood away. Naruto responded, "I disposed of a traitor, Hokage-sama." The boy's expression was familiar to the Hokage since killing was a ninja's natural job. He knew it wouldn't be worthwhile to reprimand him because he could clearly see the carefully concealed hatred. "Very well, Naruto, but I want a report on what happened tonight on my desk tomorrow along with your ninja profile, and also I want no one to know of this. It's hard enough keeping you out of trouble without people out to get you, is that understood?" Naruto grinned. He gathered his coat and then leapt off, saying, "Yay, thanks old man." Then Sarutobi turned to see Mizuki's body lying on the ground, covered in its own blood. Then, a short distance to his right, a trail of the red substance led to the unidentifiable head. The man had lost one leg. He had what appeared to be deep wounds from a sword. His back was hunched at an odd angle. Even worse than that is the head itself. His face was a bloody smear, mangled and twisted, with nearly no features to identify it to the man he was in life. His hair was dyed red in its own blood. He muttered to himself, "You truly were a fool to bring this upon yourself, Mizuki." Devils aren't emotional. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, the birds were singing, and it was a lovely new day. "Just take the damn picture already, old man. I got shit to do." Fine. Kids today no respect for their elders. In order to get the old man off his back, Naruto was eager to have his picture taken. Flash. In his photo, Naruto was fully clothed. His right arm was once more bandaged to the shoulder, and his shuriken holster was fastened firmly to his left leg. Behind him, his trench coat and silvery wild hair fluttered in the wind. Yamato was on his right hip, and his arms were folded across his chest. The whisker-like birthmarks on his cheeks gave his otherwise attractive face a slightly feral appearance. Anyone who saw this photo would be perplexed as to why the fangirls hadn't already gotten to work on him. Why in the world is a picture necessary for a ninja? Don't we want to be noticed? It's too early for this shit, whatever it is. Devils aren't emotional. Now that he was seated next to the Hokage, Naruto was facing the old man and a stranger who thought he was the shit. With a note of suspicion in his voice, Sarutobi questioned, "Is this the full report, Naruto?" "Yay. I even detailed how I kicked his ass. Can I go now? I want to work the bugs out of a jutsu I'm learned." Both abruptly turned to face the door. "Very well, you may." A young boy leapt out as it slid open. The boy then stumbled on his scarf and fell face first to the ground while yelling, "Prepare to die, old man." On the back of his head, a big drop of sweat was just beginning to form, and Naruto could feel it subsequently. Another man wearing sunglasses entered and began babbling about nothing. When the boy appeared in front of Naruto, he stood up and left the room. He pointed to Naruto and yelled, "Hey, you tripped me." The boy was grabbed by the collar, and Naruto glared at him, saying, "No, I didn't. Now out of my way." There were no symptoms of strain from the additional weight on his right arm. The man wearing sunglasses said, "Unhand him at once, Naruto. That is the Hokage's grandson, Konohamaru." Naruto glanced up at the man before turning back to the child, who was now wearing a smug expression. "I don't care who he is. Keep him out of my way or he'll be dog meat, or should I say fox meat." The young boy then cried out in shock as he was thrown into the wall with ease and landed on his back without any gentle landing. "Oh, that hurt," he thought, about to cry. Naruto taunted, "What gonna cry, grandpa's boy?" As he left after saying, "Suck it up, kid. Crying doesn't get you anywhere. Learn how to fight your own battles." He ignored the stunned expression on the face of the man wearing sunglasses. "Who does he think he is? Wait a minute, Naruto. I have to get him to train me. Like in Naruto the Prank Master." The young boy left. The pain of faint recollection. The man in the sunglasses continued to talk incoherently, and everyone seemed to ignore him. Devils aren't emotional. Now that this child was refusing to take a hint, Naruto was furious all the way to the training ground he intended to use. The runt had followed him. "Listen, you're going to come out right now before I punt you into the Hokage monument," he grumbled. As he emerged from his rather shoddy hiding place, the boy exclaimed, "So it's true you are the great Uzumaki Naruto?" When the boy approached him, Naruto asked, "Why, am I famous or something?" "You don't know?" inquired the boy. Naruto said irritably, "Well gee, I guess not since I'm asking." Konohamaru's appeared to explode. "You're the great Uzumaki Naruto. You're a prankster legend. You're the only academy student ever to prank Anbu, the Hyuga, and my grandpa without getting caught. Your pranking genius and creativity strike fear into the hearts of the most battle-hardened shinobi. You've also only been caught twice, once by grandpa and once by the legendary Iruka sensei, only person ever to keep up with you besides the Hokage of course. and even then you let them catch you and. Before the child died of starvation, Naruto made the decision to end the tirade. Okay. I get it, you're a fan, so what, you want an autograph or something? No, I mean yes I do, but that can wait. Can you please train me? The kid replied. I'll do anything to learn your legendary Oiroke no Jutsu. It's said you once made the Hokage as well as a full squad of Anbu pass out from blood loss with the jutsu. There is also the rumor that you have created a newly improved version of the Oiroke no Jutsu that is said to be 1,000 times more deadly. Naruto was incredulous. I had no idea I was that well known. That was all essentially training exercises. I don't recall ever using the Harimu no Jutsu, so how did they find out about it? He's right, the Kage Bunshin has perfected it. Naruto chose to make fun of the child. Since I'm leaving the academy, I guess I do need someone to replace me. Iruka-sensei must be kept alert. Alright kid, I accept you as my first apprentice, but be warned, if you accept this position you will listen to everything I tell you. If I say jump, you will jump high, and you will not come down till I tell you to do so. Do I make myself perfectly clear? Naruto was now standing up straight with his hands behind his ear. His example was immediately followed by Konohamaru. Sir, yes sir, he exclaimed as he stood alert. To the smaller boy, Naruto yelled, I can't hear you, maggot. Sir, yes sir, Konohamaru yelled back, his voice in full volume. With a crack of his knuckles, Naruto said, all right, then let's get started, shall we? Devils aren't emotional. That monster has the audacity to take my student away from me. The elite of the elite is who I am. The boy can only be properly shaped by me into a deserving Hokage successor to enable my student to continue on the real path to greatness. I, the great tutor Ebisu, will vanquish the demon fox and take him back. Aha! There you are. Ebisu leapt from his observation point and vanished from sight. Devils aren't emotional at the moment. Naruto and Konohamaru were relaxing on a log. More accurately, Naruto was observing Konohamaru rest. Naruto told his young charge, not bad, kid, not bad, you managed to impress me, and that's not very easy. Konohamaru grinned. Thanks boss. The young child felt his body swell with gratitude. Of course, Naruto went on, clearly deflated. Konohamaru said, it's going to take much more to become Hokage, so don't even think about getting a big head. Then Naruto sighed deeply. The young boy became excited at the thought. Also know this now, I might be your teacher and you my student, but in the end I'm just your guide. I can show you how I fight and I can show you every one of my jutsus. But the truth is you're not me and you never will be. Only you can define the style that fits you best. You could grow differently than me, making the way I fight awkward for you, and even with the same jutsu as me, you'll still be unable to use them exactly as I do, with chakra level and control differences. But boss, listen to me Konohamaru, I want you to ask yourself this. Did the Hokages all have the same jutsu? How about strengths, weaknesses? Of course not, they were all unique, different. Each one defined their own style that fit them best and kept making it stronger to balance or get rid of weaknesses. After taking a moment to process it, Naruto went on. The Hokages were great men, but that's just it. They still started as regular guys. They had to crawl before they could walk just like everyone else. They weren't born powerful or wise or leaders. But what they did different, what defined them as Hokages, is that when they were faced with a seemingly impossible obstacle they didn't back down. No, they rose to meet that challenge head on. They did the impossible itself. That's how they became great men. That is how they became Hokages. Naruto then noticed a second figure approaching. Honorable grandson, I've come to take you away from this nuisance. I forbid you to be in his presence any longer. Only I can show you the quickest path to the title of Hokage, Ebisu said as he landed in the clearing. No, go away. Naruto turned to face the teacher after interrupting. Shut up kid. You and I both know that there is no quickest path to Hokage. What kind of bullshit are you talking about? Keep quiet, you shouldn't incite my own student to oppose me. I want you to avoid him. The man concluded with a chilly glare that was slightly lethal. Look, I'll make you a deal. You and me right here. I win, you actually teach Konohamaru instead of just preaching bullshit, and if you win I'll stay away from him. Naruto then assumed a defensive stance, whispering to Konohamaru. Watch close if you want to see the perfected version of the Oiroke, so stand back. Naruto was completely unfazed by the attempt to frighten him. I'm up for the challenge, boy. Taking a stand of his own, he said, I am far more skilled than that fool Mizuki. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Then, a single Naruto surrounded Ebisu in dozens. What? You believe this move is unbeatable? He halted when he saw that they all performed a basic henge seal. Ebisu had difficulty breathing after the big smokescreen had cleared. Girls of all shapes and sizes, all naked, were all very different from one another except for their beauty. Not a single dog was among them. Wah! He felt the sharp prod of a blade all over his body just as most of his blood was about to exit his nostrils, and then they were all over him, smooth legs and perky breasts rubbing against him. Ebisu-sama, one of the blondes whispered huskily into his ear, "If you have a nosebleed like the pervert you are, we're going to teach you a very, very painful lesson." The women were still near him, but each one had a very lethal-looking katana somewhere on his body. "Do you give in?" A rather painful prod from her sword punctuated the question. The brat only used the technique to get in close. "How foolish of me to let my guard down," he said desolately. "I concede." All of them, including the one who asked him to concede, vanished in clouds of smoke, and Naruto approached him calmly through the smoke. "Now, my Harimu no Jutsu defeated you handily. The child needs to be taught, not just lectured. Don't dare baby him, and you'd better make him work hard instead of taking shortcuts. Tell me if he doesn't listen, and I'll take care of it. You tell me if this perverted idiot starts getting lazy," Naruto said as he made his way to Konohamaru. As he began to leave, Naruto said, "See ya, I'll try and say hi whenever I can, but I'm not making any promises when—" Konohamaru paled and swallowed the anxious lump in his throat, thinking of the things Naruto could do to him. "Why were you so helpful to me?" Konohamaru inquired softly. After pausing, Naruto responded without looking back, "Because, kid, you share my objective. However, I'm not sure if I'll succeed in the event that I am unable to attend. I need someone to take my place. Oh, and don't forget to use that technique only on the opponents I mentioned to you." Naruto left, vanishing into the darkness. Ebisu approached Konohamaru and asked, "Did he teach you the technique he mentioned?" "Yes, I was able to master it as well. Do you want to see?" With excitement, the young boy asked. "Naturally, I might be able to point out something that you two might have overlooked." A cloud of smoke covered him as he placed his hands in a seal to gather chakra. This was not what Ebisu had anticipated. One of the most stunning women he had ever seen emerged from the smoke. Her long smooth legs, full lips, gorgeous brown eyes, and long brown hair fell to her shoulders. The cloud of dispersing smoke barely covered her large C-cup breast and the forbidden area between her legs, leaving little room for imagination. She blushed shyly under his eyes and said, "Well, what do you think, Ebisu-sama?" The blood rushed from his nose. Before he realized it, he was lifted off the ground by a tremendous force, but he fell back down a moment later. His brain began to shut down due to the sudden loss of blood, and all of this was too much for him. Konohamaru relaxed the technique as the teacher passed out. He took a moment to poke his teacher a few times with a stick to make sure he was out. Then his lungs exploded with a cry of joy. "Yes, Oiroke no Jutsu is a success. Where am I?" Naruto surveyed his surroundings and pondered. He was on some kind of mountain overhead. Stone pillars rose behind him. The full moon appeared so near that he questioned whether he had reached out. Was it safe for him to touch? The frozen water droplets hovering in midair said, "That's strange." He noticed that he left a trail of clear air where his arm passed and felt the moisture build up on his arm as he moved his hand. "Wow, that's fascinating." Then he saw the two men motionless in the midst of combat. They were nearly identical, and it would have been hard to distinguish them if it weren't for the color difference in their clothing. The rain was so heavy that both had silver hair matted to their hair. They had the same angry expressions on their faces. He couldn't recall the location, but they even appeared somewhat familiar. "You've heard of it, haven't you? The Legend of Sparta?" Immediately on guard, he tried to identify the voice. It had the sound of a mother narrating to a baby. The sound of her voice brought everything to life. Rain started to fall again, crashing hard to the ground. Just a few moments ago, the battle that had been frozen in time came roaring back to life. He could not locate the source, so he simply listened and watched as the battle continued. Long ago, in ancient times, a demon rebelled against his own kind. For the sake of the human race, with his sword he shut the portal to the demonic world and sealed the evil entities off from our human world. But since he was a demon himself, his power was also trapped on the other side. Their swordplay made Naruto's abilities appear inexperienced. The swords met in water explosions, invisible blurs as their blades danced around them. Neither appeared to be giving or losing ground. With their swords still locked, they were frozen once more after a final battle caused the water to burst around them in the shape of a dome. He reached for his sword out of instinct when he felt a hand on his shoulder, but it was gone. He turned to look at the face of the person who had managed to ambush him. Damn. The woman couldn't be more than 20 years old. She was wearing a cheongsam, which is a form-fitting dress that accentuated her legs and bust nicely. The sleeves were cut off, and the dress had wide slits for more movement under the dress. She wore high-heeled boots and skin-tight leggings. She also had thick wristbands on her arms. Her entire wardrobe was black. She had blonde hair that reached her waist. Overall, she looked attractive. She gave him a funny look, then looked at the two engaged in combat and went on. "Their powers are impressive, are they not? Not even fully grown into their demonic heritage, and they can already defeat demons centuries older than them. Of course, What else is to be expected from Sparta's own two sons? But alas, their stories has passed. This is you story, descendant of Sparta. Gazing at his arm, Naruto questioned, so I'm related to this Sparta guy too. That's where I got my devil bringer from. As though she knew what was underneath the bandages, the woman also glanced at his arm. Yes, this is how you have acquired your unique abilities. Even now, as we speak, your power grows as your devil blood becomes even more potent. A word of warning, you will face difficult challenges ahead that will cause you to use this power, but you must not let it consume you or you risk becoming a slave to your own darkness. Suddenly, everything around them turned completely black, a bleak emptiness devoid of anything. The dreams will become more frequent, but for now our time is up. Hey, what the hell? I still got questions. What challenges? And what do you mean my blood is becoming more potent? And who are you anyway? Naruto yelled at her. Calmly, she said, all will be revealed in time, young one. She abruptly struck him in the chest with an open palm thrust, sending him flying, saying, but for now you must return. With a start, he jumped out of bed. He simply sat there for a while, gathering his thoughts while obliviously observing the sun rising outside. Damn it. She just asked me more questions. Devils aren't emotional. It was the day he at last began working as a genin. A flash of pink and yellow hurried past Naruto as he was making his way to the academy. He shrugged and asked, what the hell was that? Oh well, not like it's my problem. Devils aren't emotional, Iruka pondered while seated at his desk. You might wonder what was on his mind. It's unbelievable that Naruto killed Mizuki. I know he's strong, but even though Mizuki was a rookie chunin, he was still a chunin. Iruka has been closely observing Naruto since he first enrolled in the academy, thinking he was the Kyuubi, but all he saw was how human the child was. Iruka's perception of Naruto changed, though he was unsure of the exact moment. Iruka began attempting to comprehend Naruto. He would ask the boy for his side whenever he was in trouble, and each time he received logical responses. When it was obviously not his fault, he found some teachers who made a special effort to get him into trouble. Even though Iruka had a lot of evidence to support his claims, he was unable to resolve some of the child's problems. He gained the boy's respect, trust, and protection from the more creative pranks by doing this. Yes, Iruka was still pranked, but those were funnier and more amiable than the others who were made as retaliation. He still shuddered at some of those others. Naturally, Iruka became concerned when Naruto began training himself into the ground and stopped giving a damn about what people thought of him. He was unsure of what frightened him more when Iruka questioned him about it: the boy's delivery of the response or the response itself. Iruka-sensei, there are people who have already made up their minds, and no matter how hard I try I'm not gonna change it. So if I can never have their respect, then I will have their fear. It's as simple as that. He gave a long sigh. The newly repaired door was thrown open by two quarreling young kunoichi who rushed in at the same time, saying, you need to stop worrying Iruka, aside from the fact that it's time to start these kids on their careers as ninja. The blonde was yelled at by the pink-haired one. I won Ino Pig, so I get to sit next to Sasuke-kun. The blonde girl, Ino, yelled back at the pink-haired Sakura. No way, foreheads don't count. Sakura, besides any decent ninja, could see that I won by a mile. Next to that seat. The two were now fighting while attempting to push each other aside. Iruka was on the verge of stepping in when even Sakura and Ino paused their conversation to gaze. After strolling in and taking a moment to survey the area, Naruto Uzumaki calmly made his way to the closest open seat, which just so happened to be the one that Sakura and Ino were squabbling over, and sat down, kicking his feet up. Since they all knew you never stood between the two main Sasuke fan club leaders, none of the students moved. The two girls united in a scream, get out of my seat, Naruto. When the girls realized what they had done, their eyes widened. Throughout the classroom, there was a loud collection of gasps. You never broke this rule, aside from not interfering with the Sasuke fan club, unless you wanted to spend some time in the hospital. Never, ever consider meddling with Uzumaki Naruto under any circumstances. These kids had the advantage of numbers, size, ninja arts training, and experience, but despite all of that, none of them ever looked the same again. It was made very evident in the early days of the academy when some older kids decided it would be fun to make fun of the new kid because his mother had passed away a few days earlier. The phrase, a face only a mother could love, was redefined after Naruto beat the living daylights out of them. The message was very clear. Never, ever fuck me. After being hospitalized for at least a month, the children who had attacked him left the academy, some because they were unable to continue, and others because they were afraid of what would happen if they returned. The parents of the children made an attempt, but since Naruto was acting in self-defense, they were unable to find anything wrong with it. Now that they have realized they have violated this rule, however, let's return to what Sakura and Ino are doing. The girls were now shaking in fear of what would happen to them. They would prefer to be beaten up after hearing the rumors stories about Naruto's treatment of girls. After opening his eyes languidly and holding them there, Naruto slowly rose from his chair despite being only a few inches taller than the two girls. He appeared to loom over them. He leaned closer to them slowly and then stopped. His icy blue eyes were peering into their souls. The tension in the room was now so intense that a kunai could cut through it. Normally rivals, the girls were clinging to one another in fear. They might have wet themselves from fear. Iruka had to suppress a chuckle. Unfortunately, they are unaware of Naruto's hatred for harming women. Naruto broke the silence by saying, "You two should sit down somewhere. Your legs are barely keeping you up." He then sat down again, leaving the seat next to Sasuke open and welcoming. He was careful to give one space to go by him. A class sigh reverberated throughout the space. Ino and Sakura collapsed to the floor. Iruka made the decision to loudly clear his throat. "Would you girls kindly have a seat?" One issue was that Naruto was the only person seated in the row above him. This meant that one could sit safely above him and the other would have to sit next to him. Trying not to stutter too much, Sakura asked nervously, "It though why you wanted to sit next to Sasuke-kun Ino?" Although Sakura was a bright girl, she didn't think Sasuke was worth her life. Despite her best efforts to conceal her fear, Ino corrected, what about why you Sakura you wanted to sit next to him too, didn't you?" Despite not being as book smart, Ino believed that life was worthwhile. For a while, they both sat there anxiously examining the seat next to Sasuke. Iruka was growing impatient because they needed to find a solution quickly. "Look, we'll play a game. Loser has to sit there with Naruto," Ino made the suggestion. "Deal. The game is slug, toad, snake. First one to lose sits next to Sasuke, and Naruto. Fair?" Sakura inquired. According to Ino, fair. 1, 2, 3, go. Draw A. 1, 2, 3, go. Draw A. 1, 2, 3, go. One of them eeped at the outcome, too terrified to call out. Now that Ino was safely seated in the row above, Sakura was staring at Naruto in terror. Iruka was going through teams after concluding his lecture. Team 7 will consist of Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke. Sakura would have jumped with delight, but she was too preoccupied with her worries. Please don't, Naruto." Finally, Iruka said, "And Uzumaki Naruto." "Oh no," she thought as she slowly turned her head to face him. He was simply sitting with his eyes closed and his feet kicked up. She couldn't see any emotion on his face and said, "It seems like he doesn't care who's on his team." Without opening his eyes, he sarcastically said, "Stop staring, baby, you're making me blush." "Eep," she exclaimed as she looked up to see Iruka concluding his team structure lecture. Disregarding her inner voice, she exclaimed, "The nerve of that baka." Cha. As the Junin teachers entered the room and summoned their teams, however, none were called for Team 7. "Our teacher is probably just a bit late, correct?" The guy in the clouds started giggling. "Devils aren't emotional. We discover them still there hours later. What's taking him so long?" Inner Sakura and she were both annoyed by their new sensei's tardiness. In an attempt to strike up a conversation, Sakura asked, "So what do you think our Junin sensei is like?" Sasuke merely grunted while remaining in his corner seat, while Naruto shrugged. Iruka sensei had been gone for at least an hour. With his eyes still closed, Naruto uttered, "Whoever this guy is, I don't like him." Sasuke simply grunted once more. Naruto opened one eye to look at Sasuke. "Hey pretty boy, get that stick out of your ass. We're on the same team now, so we're gonna have to talk to each other eventually." Sasuke's forehead had a vein that came to life. Naruto went on, "Oh, and do you try and make your hair look like a bird's ass, or is it just like that naturally?" His eye began to twitch, and others joined that vein. Turning to Sakura, Naruto said, "What about you, babe? You seem to be able to talk. What do you think about the team?" Sakura continued to wonder why their new Junin sensei was taking so long. It can't hurt to have a little small talk. In addition, I question whether the rumors' claims about Naruto are accurate. "Well, we appear to be well balanced. I'm the best student. Sasuke is Rookie of the Year, and you are, dead last. Punk." She wouldn't dare say that aloud, of course, but inner Sakura finished for her. "What am I?" He made fun of it. Sasuke scowled and said, "She's saying you're dead last, idiot." "Hey, the handsome boy is able to talk even though I'm dead last. Your bird ass-shaped head can still sweep, mop, and dry the floor. Rookie of the Year is more accurately described as show-off of the year. Are you upset? Will you take action, or will you just sit in a corner and mope?" Naruto was now completely focused on Sasuke. Sakura watched a little fearfully from her seat a row above Sasuke, knowing that she wouldn't be able to stop them if they decided to fight. Sasuke didn't know what it was, but normally he could just ignore people, but this guy just got on his nerves effortlessly. Sakura bravely attempted to break up the impending melee by saying, "Come on Naruto, Sasuke just meant that your skills are unknown." "No," Sasuke said sternly, "I meant exactly what I said, he is a loser." "Are you scared that you'll break a nail, or do you want to show that I'm dead, pretty boy?" With a smile, Naruto replied, his blue eyes fixed on Sasuke's dark black ones, anticipating his next move. Sakura saw the faint tensing of Sasuke's muscles in preparation for an attack, but before he could strike, the door opened, revealing a silver-haired man with his forehead protector covering his left eye and a ninja mask covering the lower part of his face. After a moment of standing in the doorway, he said, "Well, 3 is already going to be a handful, I can tell." Devils aren't emotional. The academy's roof was now home to the new Team 7 candidates. "Well, since we might be a team, why don't we learn a little bit about each other?" the silver-haired man said, clearing his throat before continuing. "Just include the essentials, such as name, interests, dislikes, pastimes, and aspirations for the future." "Will you go ahead and demonstrate how, Sensei?" Sakura inquired. "My name is Hokage Kakashi, so yeah, I'm the type of guy who keeps his preferences to himself. I have a lot of hobbies, and my future goals are really none of your business." The genin's thoughts were raised by Naruto, who said, "Wow, that was an annoying way to tell us your name." Kakashi ignored the sarcastic response and declared, "Well, how about you next since you volunteered?" "Since I'm Uzumaki Naruto, let's put aside my preferences, interests, pastimes, and aspirations. You clearly don't care now because none of you were interested in finding out in the first place, in the same way that I could care less about what any of you say about yourselves." Naruto stopped, indicating that he was finished, saying, "If you want to know me, then get to know me. I'm not going to just confess everything to you." Sakura was intrigued by Naruto and decided that since she essentially knew everything there was to know about Sasuke, she might as well learn more about him. "Whoa, I didn't know Naruto was such a mystery. All I really know is that he was really nice when I went to his birthday party a few years ago and that he had a really nice mom." The curiosity seems to trickle down to Sasuke as well. "I wonder if he's really Adobe. I have never really seen him fight before, so I can't be sure. Maybe he'll be a worthy opponent. I'm not sure what to do with this one. Judging by the sword, he must prefer it to hand-to-hand combat. As for ninjutsu, the fact that the rumor was able to copy and use the Kage Bunshin after witnessing Mizuki perform it once in the heat of battle shows that he has potential in ninjutsu, but I'm not sure where chakra control stands. The boy has basically shut himself off from others with no desire to seek out companionship." "What about the next young woman?" He fixed her with one eye. "Oh, well, I'm Haruno Sakura, and my likes are," blushes as she looks at Sasuke. "My dream as well," blushes even more as she looks at Sasuke again, giggling, "and I don't like Ino Pig." The obvious show of affection was met with no response from Sasuke, who said, "Humph, she's annoying." Naruto didn't really care about the girl, but his ears were still ringing from her scream. "Well, I can't really say I'm surprised. Fucking harpy, yelling in my ear. I wonder if I should break her slowly or just crush it out of her fast and without mercy. Either way, I'm going to have to build her basically from scratch. A fangirl if I ever saw one. Low chakra balanced out by high control, very minimal physical conditioning, most likely knows absolutely nothing beyond basics." Kakashi turned to face his last member and remarked, "And last but certainly not least, if his title holds true." Naruto mumbles, loud enough for everyone to hear, "A title is just a title. Sasuke Uchiha, almost everything I dislike, and almost nothing I like. I will kill someone I genuinely despise and restore my clan because I have no dreams." "Sasuke is so cool," the girl said, gazing at him with a starry gaze. Naruto was bored and didn't give a damn about this guy's sympathy party, and people think I have issues. I assumed so. He's probably training himself in Uchiha combat techniques, but I can't tell how skilled he is until I put him to the test, Kakashi thought. His thoughts were interrupted by the girl's voice. Sensei, what did you mean when you mentioned a while back that we might be a team?" "Nothing," he laughed, "just that your chances of passing the test to join my team are 66%. He gave them each a sheet of paper and said, "The test location is listed on those sheets." He vanished in a cloud of smoke after saying, "Oh, and if I were you, I wouldn't eat breakfast because you'll throw up." Devils aren't emotional. The two children are seen waiting for their Junin instructor to arrive early the following day. Sakura rubbed her aching stomach while sitting beneath a tree. "I wonder where Naruto is. He and Kakashi sensei are an hour late." Ignoring his hunger, Sasuke sat in a tree and said, "Idiot, probably got lost." Boo. Eek. Naruto had managed to sneak behind Sakura undetected by Sasuke, or the girl Sakura practically leapt out of her skin and into the air, landing a short distance away, then turning to face Naruto, who was laughing and rolling on the ground. Anger taking over, she yelled at him, "And where have you been, Naruto?" He just arched an eyebrow as he stood up. "That's none of your damn business, now is it?" In a matter of seconds, Sakura's anger gave way to terror. She was able to smell incense. What would he? It dawned on her she didn't know what to say, but fortunately she didn't have to. He was visiting his mother's grave. Naruto sat down beneath the tree and remarked, "So I guess you guys still waiting for Cyclops?" Taking a seat close to Naruto but not too close, Sakura carefully replied, "Yay, he still hasn't shown up yet." From the tree branch, Sasuke uttered the words, "This guy better show up soon. Naruto isn't as horrible as I initially believed. To be able to move past us both, what are you concealing?" They waited after that and waited and waited. When their sensei entered the clearing 2 hours later, the genin gave him a great deal of intent to kill, amazing, but insufficient. Kakashi began to explain. After setting a clock on a stump, he took out 2 bells and held them in front of him, saying, "I have just set this alarm for noon. Your task is to take one of these bells from me before the timer sounds. Anyone that fails gets tied to those stumps with no lunch." Well, it appears that I forgot to eat my light breakfast before this exercise. Naruto nearly grinned, but chose not to reveal it. "All you need is one," Kakashi went on, "but there are only 2, so one of you will always be denied lunch. That individual will be the first to fail and return to the academy in shame. We'll start on my mark, but first I'll give you a hint. You won't receive a bell unless you intend to kill." "But Kakashi-sensei, that's risky." When Kakashi started counting, Sakura blurted out but was ignored. 3. They understood that he was serious. 2. Every pupil stiffened in anticipation. Start. The teacher was left standing in the clearing alone, or so he believed, while the students withdrew to strategize and wait. Naruto remained in the same spot, unmoved, and simply stood there staring at Kakashi as if assessing him. Kakashi didn't want to lower his defenses just yet because Naruto was still too unpredictable for arrogance. "Look underneath," Kakashi said, sensing something was wrong. "You know, it is not very smart to confront me head-on." When Yamato was drawn, Naruto pointed the blade at Kakashi before making his move. Kakashi's response was the long sound of a sword being unsheathed. "He is trying to unnerve me." Basic psychology. With his coat fluttering behind him and his sword poised to strike, Naruto appeared to glide across the ground. "Streak," he thought, swinging his sword horizontally in a wide arc, but Kakashi stopped it by catching it between his bare hands, knocking him off balance before breaking the tip off and stabbing him with it. Naruto then vanished in smoke. "Naruto, you'll need to perform better than that. Just what are you planning?" Kakashi yelled into the forest around them. "I've trained with Hayate as well." That was a clone. And it was solid. Where did he learn that? Was the same thought shared by the 2 genin who were still hiding in the surrounding foliage. Kakashi didn't have to wait long because 5 more Narutos quickly surrounded him and ran in a star formation around him. They waited for the right moment, and then each of them slashed their sword for another streak attack. Kakashi kicked 2 of them in the face and leapt high into the air, not expecting 2 to follow him. High Roller was their next attack, and Aerial Rave was their next move. Their swords blurred as they danced around their wielder with remarkable speed. A Naruto rushed past him, stabbing his own clone, and the original just stood there in a defensive stance as it vanished in a burst of smoke. Kakashi used one Naruto to take an attack for him, and it instantly dispersed, split, landed on the ground, forcing him to quickly move or risk being cut down the middle by the Naruto in the air. Kakashi then had to dodge to the side to avoid being impaled. If you want to become a master of the Kage Bunshin, you still have work to do. However, considering that you recently learned this technique, I must admit that the way you used it to test my defenses while waiting for an opening is a little impressive, but since I have more students to test, I'm afraid I have to end this now. So, they were all clones. That one has potential. Now what about the other ones? Kakashi then vanished with blinding speed. Reappearing behind Naruto with his hands in a seal, he attacked. Senengarashi. Kakashi then used his tiger seal to violently poke Naruto in the back, only for that Naruto to vanish as well. "So that's where you're hiding. It is foolish to give away your position, even if you did think my guard was down." Kakashi jumped from his hiding area on the hunt after being hit head-on by a shower of shuriken and kunai, and his image was then engulfed in smoke, revealing a log. Our young Kunoichi was searching frantically for Sasuke, but she was unsuccessful, and she had hardly had time to hide when Kakashi looked at her, gazing for a moment before turning back to the book he was reading. "He hasn't noticed me, which is good," pissed Sakura. "What?" Sakura turned to face Kakashi. He looked her in the eye and said calmly, Megan. Narukumi no Jutsu. She was back in a clearing when leaves whirled around him and engulfed her as well. She thought, what happened? Where'd Kakashi-sensei go? As she frantically looked around. Sakura, the voice was familiar to her. Sasu. She looked at something that chilled her. Naruto entered the clearing, grabbed Sasuke by the neck, and lifted him off the ground. Sasuke was leaning against a tree covered in his own blood, full of kunai and shuriken, blood still leaking from the wounds, his left arm and right leg completely gone, leaving stumps in their places, and his left leg bent at an unnatural angle and already swelling. Sasuke managed to choke out, Sakura, help me. Naruto stabbed him viciously as soon as he finished speaking, dropping him as blood poured from the stab. As Sasuke's eyes pleaded for assistance, Yamato then decapitated Sasuke with a flick of his wrist, causing the body to fall into its own blood and the head to roll up to Sakura, fixing its glassy eyes on her. She felt a chill run up her spine as she saw Naruto's lust-filled, icy eyes as his gaze locked on her and then moved up and down her body. He walked forward and said, I think I'll have some fun with you first. She did the only thing she could think of as he got closer. She screamed and fainted. From his treetop perch, Kakashi observed the entire event. Maybe too much, but it is only a simple genjutsu, he said. Sakura's scream, which sounded like someone pleading for death, reached Sasuke just as he was finishing up his traps, and despite the fact that she was incredibly annoying, he felt a certain amount of sympathy for her. Kakashi, leaning against a tree, said, Don't worry about your little girlfriend Sasuke, she only got caught in a genjutsu. Sasuke had to state unequivocally that she was not his girlfriend, although it came out as a rather undignified yes. He didn't want to waste time letting Kakashi guess incorrectly. Kakashi laughed and said, You will need to find a wife if you want to rebuild your clan, and based on what I've seen thus far, it's clear that she likes you, and I might even be kind enough to let you borrow my Icha paradise if you need any ideas. Kakashi then displayed a rather interesting and graphic illustration from his book. To stop the blood from streaming out, Sasuke had to pinch his nose. Enough, I'm not like them, he yelled angrily. Kakashi put his book away and remarked, You can say that, after you have gotten a bell, little Uchiha. When Sasuke threw a few shuriken, Kakashi ducked to the left, only to fall into a trap. The shuriken he threw had sliced through a wire, launching multiple kunai at Kakashi's current position, and when he dodged again, he was met by Sasuke's sneak attack. Sasuke continued to attack, but none of his blows were able to penetrate Kakashi's defense, but his attacks had created a gap where Kakashi could reach for the bells, and Kakashi could see it coming. Taijutsu is decent and creative, but still lacking preparation. Skills are good but not thorough enough. I'll admit you are good, but you're not great, Kakashi said, evaluating his abilities as the fight continued. Your abilities are still deficient. Even without his Sharingan, Kakashi was aware of the impending attack when Sasuke began using Seal's Bukaku no Jutsu. Before the attack could singe him, he was underground. What he could have dodged? Where is he? Above, behind, left, right? Sasuke felt something grab his foot after the smoke and fire had subsided. Little Uchiha, right under your nose. Sasuke was then dragged underneath and looked up at Kakashi, who said, Your ninjutsu isn't bad either, but it's not enough to match up to me. Kakashi then turned to leave, saying, I'll be waiting back at the starting point if you want a rematch, but you might want to hurry up and dig yourself out first. Naruto arrived with Sakura's bridal attire as soon as Kakashi left, and although Sakura regained consciousness, she fainted once more upon realizing who was carrying her. Damn, that's the fourth time that has happened. Naruto put her down and turned to face the Uchiha, saying, And it's really starting to annoy me. Sasuke just scowled at Naruto as he joked, You look ahead of the situation. Look, I'll make you a deal. You just need to assist me in getting the bells, and I'll pull you out of your hole naturally. I won't stop you from playing in the dirt if that's your preference. Sasuke remained silent for some time, but the Uchiha caved when Naruto turned to go. You have a plan, then? Sakura was oddly silent now that she was completely awake, and after Naruto threatened to harm her if she fainted again, she just sat there without moving or speaking. Sasuke asked, brushing some dirt off his shirt. A plan? Fuck that, Naruto sighed in response to Sasuke and Sakura's deadpan expression. Look, if you guys want a plan, fine, we'll wing it. We go. We beat the shit out of him, and we get bells. As you go along, make it up, take turns striking, strike hard, block each other's blows, and stay out of my way. Yes, that ought to suffice. Hurry up now, he said as he turned to leave. Sakura immediately rose at his command and followed, while Sasuke muttered something under his breath but also followed grudgingly. As he put his book away, Kakashi sensed their chakra signatures approaching, so they managed to put away their differences and take a last stand. It's okay, I didn't anticipate that they would receive it. A huge fireball was ejected as a dark blur leapt over the clearing. So Sasuke is using ninjutsu for long-range support. Kakashi leapt aside, allowing the fireball to burst in front of him, but with weapons falling on him, he had to stay moving. A few more fireballs and an abundance of weapons followed, and weapons are used to conserve chakra while giving enough time to perform more ninjutsu. After using up all of his weapons, Sasuke landed and sent one final fireball before his legs failed him. The others must have also lent him their weapons. Makadzuki no Mai. Naruto style. Kakashi was surrounded by several Naruto copies. Waiting until the very last second, Kakashi turned around and caught Naruto's blade in his hands. So, Naruto is at point, but this is Hayate's move and I know how to block it. Naruto simply replied with a smile, Hayate trained you well, but your attack is much weaker than his. The other Narutos who had surrounded him struck, saying, who said it was supposed to be as fast as his? Didn't you hear this is my version? In the shadow of his illusionary movement, he concealed shadow clones. All of the attacks turned Kakashi into a pincushion before the man simply exploded in smoke, leaving me completely impressed. Naruto collapsed to the ground, panting. Kakashi nodded and said, you bastard, you had a substitute made just in case. While that is a very impressive technique, it should only be used as a sure kill on a trapped opponent. It's too easy to dodge if prepared, and the strain it puts you though to use the illusion and make clones in the shadow doesn't allow you to press the attack. Nonetheless, very impressive. Naruto pushed himself up, took 2 shaky steps toward Kakashi, then stumbled and fell, face down. His hand just inches from the bell's anger made Naruto's hand clench. His body simply gave out. Even though he was so close he couldn't move, but he was still conscious. He didn't hear the faint chime when he moved, so he said, now where is the third one? Wait. He turned to see Sakura with the 2 bells in her hands. She simply looked anxiously at Kakashi, then Kakashi laughed, which was something none of the genin had anticipated. When he did stop, he responded to the 3 people's perplexed expressions. After regaining their strength, Naruto and Sasuke managed to sit down. Excellent. You all passed. There is way too much potential here to waste on someone else. Besides, I've been bored as hell ever since I retired from the Anbu, and since you are all already warmed up, we'll stop for lunch break and start training immediately. But before we begin, I'm sure you're all wondering what the point of the test was. He moved a few feet toward the stone. You will find a time when you will have to choose the mission or a teammate. My family, friends, and even loved ones' names are all carved into this stone. Though we're all killed in action, to abandon your mission does make you a failure. But to abandon you teammates make you even worse than that. Now eat. You're going to need all the energy you can get. Devils aren't emotional. They had no idea how long they had endured the excruciating torment known as training. Even with his incredible endurance, Naruto would be worn out. Naturally, the fact that his tasks appear more difficult and that he trained after Kakashi finished them could also be contributing factors. Despite his easygoing demeanor, Kakashi was a formidable taskmaster. They believed him because of the training he put the genin through, and because he claimed to have been a captain in the Anbu at one point before he even arrived. He assigned them all a ton of work to complete, each one distinct from the others. When he eventually arrived, he would add more training assignments that tested your limits. You couldn't ignore him as he lectured on topics like self-scouting and team attacking, because he kept checking in with questions to make sure you were paying attention from the beginning. It was drilled into them. They would then complete a mission, or perhaps multiple missions, following each training session. Kakashi's word was law in this world. If you disobeyed, you would suffer the consequences. Devils aren't emotional at that. The 3 genin collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Enough. At last they were done in this particular task. They had to perform full sit-ups with their legs straight out, adhere a leaf to their forehead using chakra control, and then perform pull-ups with their legs at a 90-degree angle while sticking to a tree with their hands. Hold the chakra control steady while they paused at random points to avoid moving. Kakashi then left after saying, good work team, that's all for today. I'm going to see if I can get us a C-ranked mission. If they hadn't known Kakashi had divine hearing, they would have exhaled in relief. Furthermore, the training's outcomes were not to be laughed at. Sakura had initially struggled the most, but she gradually started to catch up. She still had excellent control, but her low, almost pitiful chakra levels had risen to the normal range for a kunoichi. Although she didn't yet have a specific role, she was familiar with the fundamentals of all 3 ninja domains. Although Sasuke's chakra lacked Sakura's enormous leap, it had more reserves and more control. He leaned in the direction of taijutsu and ninjutsu, each concentrating on his own combat in the Uchiha style. Because of his already incredible reserve, Naruto's chakra didn't jump, but his control did, as it was his primary training goal. Sakura and Sasuke were aware that he was not someone they wanted as an enemy, Even though they were unsure of his precise strength in battle, Naruto mostly used his katana, which they think he named Yamato, and very few ninjutsu and genjutsu. They were powerful and always being used and mastered in new ways. Even though they were few, his bandaged arm was as mysterious as Kakashi's face, and they would watch him move as though to use it, but they never did. Devils aren't emotional. Naruto reflected on his second vision while he slept. Naruto had nearly forgotten the odd visions. Only when he graduated from the academy had it happened. The odd woman predicted that they would occur more frequently. Here he was once more. This time, however, he was somewhere else. He was in a big room. This time the ceiling, walls, and a platform in the center of the room were all covered in numerous intricate markings. Also present and engaged in combat were the same two men from his previous dream. Naruto was catching up, but their swordsmanship was still superior. The ancient runes underfoot appeared to absorb the blood from their wounds. As they fought, the blood kept flowing wound for wound. Each gave to the other. Who was winning could not be determined. Naruto yelled into the room, "So, you feel like coming out?" The enigmatic woman from his previous dream emerged from the darkness and approached him, her hips swaying slightly. "Your devil powers have grown from our last meeting. I must say your rate of growth is astounding. I'm able to find your signature easier now. As we speak, I'm currently tracking you down." Naruto stiffened to Naruto's surprise. She bowed deeply and knelt before him, asking, "Why are you tracking me? Better yet, who are you and why do you care?" "I am a servant to Sparta's heirs. I have not sensed a worthy heir for years. Forgive me, my young master. I am known as Trish. I am a guide of sorts for young ones of Sparta's blood. I am tracking you to help you develop into your full devil heritage." She stayed where she was and kept a lowered head. Naruto wasn't accustomed to people suddenly showing up and swearing loyalty to him. The only thing that came to mind was his response, "Get up, I haven't done anything for you to need to me." Despite appearing surprised by his response, the woman now known as Trish got up. Then, as before, the room grew dark. Naruto questioned, "What, time's up already?" He gave Trish a suspicious glance. He could still clearly recall how he was expelled from the vision the last time. Trish gave a headshake. She turned to the blackness that was now forming something else and said, "No master, merely a change watch, for a new battle is beginning." In front of them, the scene took shape. They were now in a watery area with crystal-like pillars surrounding them. Rather than a seal-filled room, the man in red just used a claymore-like blade to block a blow from a demon that looked like an insect. Trish said, "Look, young master, here is Sparta's form." Naruto asked, "What do you mean the form? Is he really that Sparta guy?" After that, the demon changed into a shapeless, blob-like being. That is not the true Sparta, nor is he of Sparta's bloodline. Therefore he cannot harness or control the blade he holds in his grasp. He is only turned into his inner darkness. Both of them watched as the blob and the man in red engaged in combat. The man in red was obviously stronger, but his arrogance cost him. If it weren't for the man in blue, a strike would have slashed out and caught him. It was incredible to see the two cooperating in combat. Rather than engaging in combat, every action was supported by instinct. They simply responded to each other without exchanging words. The blob could do nothing to stop their assault. They only used the other weapon as effectively. Despite the fact that the blob prevented them from using their signature weapon, they completed the blob with a final burst of demonic power. Then everything grew gloomy once more. As Trish disappeared from view, Naruto found himself staring at his apartment's ceiling. "Now we are out of time, young master. Return and think about what has been shown to you." "Hey Naruto." The girl with the pink hair jolted Naruto out of his reverie. "Hey, you there? I've been trying to get to you. Kakashi-sensei managed to get us a C-ranked mission, but we have to catch that damn cat again. He said the Fire Lord's wife personally requested us for the mission. Since we get it back so fast." She began to walk away from Sasuke, who was already moving. Naruto snarled, still complaining. Naruto went on, "Fucking cat, I wanted to kill it the 5th time, but no. That's against the rules. Fuck rules. That the thing needs to die. I must run. You must hide there, unable to locate me. I refuse to return. Not once more." The diminutive figure sped through the thick forest in the distance. He could hear faint rustling noises. He could detect the subtle aromas of his supporters. He could feel the winds shifting, indicating that they were approaching. Before they could find him, he had to hide. There, at the far end of a clearing, he noticed a big thorn bush. It would give him the ideal cover. The sense of his followers were now closer. He needed to make it. He dashed across the open space. Using all the energy he had left, he leapt with a strong spring to get there before his assailants could catch up with him. "I will succeed," he thought gleefully. "You are KK. That is, until he was snatched out of the air by the scruff of his neck by a powerful grip. "No, give me a break. I refuse to return. Never." Despite its defiant struggles, the small cat was unable to escape the hold. Despite his best efforts to hiss, flail, and scratch, he was unable to escape. "Come on, I'll even make it clean and quick." which is more than this damn thing deserves. We'll tell her it got killed by wild dogs, or something. She'll get over it. Hell, I'm pretty damn sure she can just get a new one. No, not him. The cat turned slightly to see who was holding him. Anyone but him. No. The cat would have sobbed at that very moment if it had been able to cry. The silver-haired one was the one holding him. There was no longer any hope of escape. When the boy's cold blue eyes met his, he stopped struggling on his rough skin. The boy's bandaged hand tightened painfully. Tendons of unseen energy began to slowly encircle his neck. He was going to die. A frustrated voice said, "No, Naruto," through his earpiece. "Target is to be brought back safely and intact. Is identity confirmed?" As the dark-haired cat examined him, the other slouched in relief. "Yay. Identity is confirmed. Tiger, cat of the Fire Lord's wife." As the kind pink-haired one arrived to rescue him from the malevolent silver-haired one's clutches, the cat became even more at ease. This cat would be doing a great job of looking smug if cats could look that way. He was slammed into a nearby tree so forcefully that the wind left his lungs and his ribs hurt before the pink one could get to him. The wood beside his head was then cracked by a fist. Naruto gave him a vile look. The cat could even see faint traces of red bleeding into his blue eyes, which betrayed his anger and frustration. Tiger sensed Naruto's arm tighten around his neck with a dark energy. Was he going to die here? The hatred was so intense. After going limp, he was flung to the kind person with the pink hair. Struggling to contain his rage, Naruto uttered, "Take the damn thing. If I carry it, it'll be dead before we make it 10 feet. With focused intent to kill, he could hardly resist turning the cat's mind into mush. His devil bringer was trembling, as though he wanted to crush the cat. Sakura looked at his right arm and noticed a slight hint of blue beneath the coat. "Are you okay, Naruto? Tiger got you pretty good with his claws?" None of the genin voiced it, but they were all eager for the higher-ranked mission. "I'm fine, let's go. The faster we get done, the faster we can get our C-ranked mission. Defending a person against robbers, bandits, and possibly even a few lesser demons." They all wanted to put what they had learned to the test. Even though Naruto was unable to kill the cat, it was still enjoyable to watch it be ruthlessly smothered with lethal love. He would still prefer to kill it, but either way, either would be perfectly acceptable. The Hokage spoke to them as the woman went to pay for their labors. "Now other open D-ranked missions we have include babysitting, delivering groceries, gardening," a woman screamed, and there was a flurry of foot traffic and papers all over the place, "and catching the Fire Lady's cat, again." Naruto was already stomping out the door, saying, "Fuck no, I did not just waste an hour catching it for the damn thing to run away in less than 5 fucking minutes." From behind him, Kakashi yelled, "Remember Naruto, intact. Here kitty kitty, come out and play," was the Jonin's response. This was followed by a cat's scream, falling trees, the distant thunk of a sword becoming lodged in a tree, and then complete silence. The Fire Lady questioned, "He wouldn't hurt my dear Tiger, would he?" With his nose in his book, Kakashi remarked, "Actually, I'd be surprised if the cat came back alive, or in one piece for that matter." The Fire Lady's eyes began to well up with tears. She raised her head in hope and asked, "Wait, did I say in that? You might not even get anything to bury when Naruto's done." When Kakashi saw Naruto carrying in the cat, or what had once been a cat, he stopped as though witnessing severe trauma. The once luxuriant orange fur turned a stark white. It had glossy, wide eyes, and the only movement it displayed was the occasional shudder. Naruto approached the Fire Lady and placed the seemingly lifeless animal in her embrace. The cat simply shuddered in his owner's arms before going completely limp. "Don't worry, me and him just had a nice little heart-to-heart chat, and I don't think he'll be running away anytime soon, if ever." The cat wasn't entirely alive, but it wasn't dead either. Naruto grinned as he made his way back to his group. Kakashi saw that the bandages were ruffled, as though they had been quickly wrapped. "Well, I think I feel sorry for the cat on second thought. I suppose it was inevitable." Kakashi said, "Hokage-sama, to the elderly leader, I had reserved a C-ranked mission for my team." The Hokage paused to reflect. He turned to face the door and said, "Ah yes." The genin were excited. Would they be protecting a princess, a lord, or a negotiator? "You can come in now." A grizzled old man entered holding a half-empty bottle of recently purchased sake. "What? I spent a lot of money on 3 children and an unidentified one-eyed man, and are you simply trying to imitate your teacher, Shrimp, or is silver the new style?" Yamato was drawn slowly by Naruto, who said, "What was that, old man? A death wish?" The boy complained while sheathing Yamato and muttered to himself, "As if I'm a pervert like him, that's insulting." Kakashi grabbed the boy before he could move forward, saying, "Well, I've been kind of busy, but I think I can help you out." Kakashi chose to ignore the slight to his ego. "No, Naruto, killing a customer would hurt your company's bottom line, of course, Perhaps I should show him how dangerous you three are if he feels comfortable insulting my students, Kakashi said, glancing at the elderly man. I'm the great bridge builder, Tazuna, the elderly man said firmly, but the ninja could sense his nervousness. I expect you to defend me with your lives because I paid a good deal of money for you to lead me home safely in the morning. We depart. After receiving their mission papers, the students were left to prepare for their journey to the land of waves by packing and resting. After turning off his shower, Naruto grabbed a towel and wrapped it around his waist before approaching the mirror and looking at himself. He was slender, but years of working himself into the ground had packed his body with defined muscle, and his deep blue eyes and whisker-like birthmarks, along with the elaborate seal on his stomach, indicated that he was the container of the Kyuubi. He was somewhat relieved that the old man had told him about it after she passed away. And lastly, his right, devil-bringer, arm, as he called it, a whole right arm from hand to shoulder, dark reddish armor with glowing light blue skin underneath, his silver hair still wet and almost falling to his shoulders, never spiking like it did when it was blonde, so he always wore it down. Bum, his body throbbed with vitality, and he clutched the counter while his body ached. His heart pounded as the devil-bringer's armor began to creep up his body, slowly crawling up his neck and onto his chest, leaving the skin beneath the red armor with a faint blue glow that was noticeable but not as strong as his devil-bringer itself. Erg, he said, grabbing his devil-bringer as it began to spasm uncontrollably. Bum, the second time, the pulse was more powerful. What's taking place? When he looked up at the mirror, he noticed that his right eye was glowing a deep blood red, and that his canines and whisker marks were more noticeable. His voice grew deeper and seemed to echo as if it were being spoken by two people. His body then began to radiate a deep blue aura, which gradually grew stronger as it swirled around him in an attempt to take on a faint form, but everything stopped before it could manifest. Exhausted, he collapsed to the ground, feeling and seeing the blue aura and the devil-bringer fade. Gathering the strength to get up, he glanced in the mirror once more, and his appearance was identical to that of when he had just stepped out of the shower. How on earth was that? After stumbling out of the restroom, he barely managed to put on boxers before fainting in bed. He was wearing a black shirt, pants, gloves, and boots with a big red trench coat over them. His silver hair was disheveled, and he carried a broadsword with a screaming skull design on the guard on his back. Neither me nor Virgil developed at such a rate. I'm going to have to watch this one closely. He vanished in a blur of red. The man was silently watching everything that happened in the apartment from a tree outside. He was standing in a river that flowed off into the night, ankle deep in water. Now, where in the world am I? Trish, who was already there, laughed when he asked her if she had said anything amusing. He asked irritably because he disliked being made fun of. It's just ironic, Master. He could feel some of the female attributes pressing into his back as she whispered in his ear. This is the portal to hell. She simply existed, without teleporting or moving at high speed. He asked sternly, how did you do that? Master, I am your guardian. As your guardian, I explain your abilities, both normally and through the dreams. Trish didn't move, so it appeared that she was content with her position. Naruto was accustomed to her, but not this close. So the dreams are under your control? The dreams belong to them. Master, I can lead them, but I have little power. Even though she didn't move, she didn't show any signs of malice, so he simply left her where she was. How did she know what happened? But more importantly, I'm becoming a devil, he said. Now watch. This one is important considering your devil form is starting to manifest. In contrast to all the previous battles in which he had only witnessed the end, he watched as the two brothers emerged and began fighting. They began slowly testing each other's defenses before putting their all into it. This battle was far superior to the others. Their speed and power were enormous, and not a single move was wasted. They were at a standstill the entire time as the battle accelerated. Naruto found it increasingly difficult to keep up with their movements. He was left speechless after he believed he had seen everything they had to offer. As if coming to a silent conclusion, they both burst into power and assumed various more demonic forms, even adopting their preferred color. The blue demon had dull horns pointing upward in a V-shape with 4 wings on his back and a sheath on his right arm, while the red one had sharp horns pointing downward with 2 wings on his back. Now that they were everywhere, Naruto could hardly keep up with their movements. They moved so quickly that they left images in their wake. The only time he saw them clearly was when they clashed in explosions of blue and red energy, with the blue one wielding a katana and the red one wielding a broadsword. Yamato was the blue one using his sword, and the man from 10 years ago was actually him. The 2 demonic forms vanished as soon as he realized it. Trish finally let him go, saying, "It seems you've realized what the dreams were trying to show you. They are no longer needed." "Wait, that's all I'll see in the dreams?" He turned to look at her and said. "The dreams will come back, but for now they have fulfilled their purpose." "All right, are you saying that I will become like them?" Naruto was afraid of that thought. He could deal with being a demon, even a devil, but would he lose himself or remain the same? You might or might not. Each person of demonic descent has a unique devil trigger. Why did you look troubled, Master? Trish was perplexed because it was a sign of immense power to summon one's devil trigger form at such a young age. I just want to know what I'm going to become. Will I be able to control it like those guys, or will I remain that way? Who are those guys, by the way? You never identified them, but I keep seeing them. He required more information. You're still a work in progress. The transformation into your devil form is causing your body to adjust. The two sons of Sparta. Then Trish then began to turn transparent, saying, "Time's up, my master, but I am almost to your current location. The blue one is Virgil, and the red one is Dante." With that, she vanished from view as Naruto fell into a dreamless slumber. "I will be with you very soon." As Trish was ready to start running again, she felt a familiar vibe. "Nice to see you again, Dante." "You look good, Trish," said the man who went by Dante, who came into view in a flash of red and landed gently on the ground. "I see you're still protecting deceased people. Your line needs to be maintained by someone, but that's all I have to say about you. A son of Sparta who has isolated himself from the outside world and whose abilities have outstripped Sparta's." He looked up at the moon and remarked, "Trish, keep an eye on the child. This isn't my world anymore. The devils and demons are congregating and becoming more frequent. We all have our roles, including me, and I can sense something big coming," he replied, continuing to gaze at the moon. "Dante, what do you know?" Trish knew Dante, and unless something terrible was about to happen, he was never like this. He faded away in a haze of red energy, saying, "You just do your part and train the kid, and I'll do mine." At full speed, Trish took off, asking, "What's going on? What is causing the demons to congregate? And what role does the new master play?" Even though he was still mostly asleep, Naruto felt fantastic when he woke up. The sun was just coming up outside, and as the chilly morning air blew over him, he drew his head between two pillows and snuggled closer to the warmth. "Hold on, when did I get two pillows?" he asked, growing more alert by the moment he had just stepped into a warm, movable space. A chill ran down his spine as he felt hot breath in his ear, unaware of how he had missed them in the first place. He also felt two arms encircle him. "Good morning, master." He grabbed Yamato nearby and ran out of his bed, only to turn around and see Trish. The woman was sitting in his bed, wearing one of his larger shirts, barely covering anything. Naruto couldn't help but gaze at the intriguing movements of her female anatomy as she stretched. But how was all Naruto could manage to escape all of this was still being processed by his brain. After sliding out of bed, she approached Naruto and said, "Why, master, didn't I tell you? I had found you." She walked around him, taking in every detail. When he finally realized he was still wearing his boxers, he blushed under her gaze. "I must say, your power is so unusual. It will stably grow one instant while at other times it will jump dramatically." At last, Naruto's brain was functioning normally again. He began to pace the room, saying, "Shit, I got a mission. How am I going to explain you?" "Don't worry, master, we'll be fine." "Where is he?" "He knows the mission is today. Even Kakashi-sensei is on time." Sakura began to cry. Tazuna and Naruto were the only members of Team 7 outside the village gate. Kakashi's favorite orange book was buried in his nose. Sasuke, visibly irate that the mission was being delayed, leaned against a tree. Nor was Tazuna the most patient of people. "Where is that silver-haired munchkin? We're wasting time." Kakashi snapped his book shut and turned to face the village. "He's coming, and it seems he's brought a friend along." All eyes turned to Kakashi's direction, where Naruto and the individual behind him were getting closer. They were all thinking the same thing. Who is she? Why does she have Naruto with her? But Kakashi was the most inquisitive. According to Naruto's file, he had no surviving family and isn't the type to go out and make friends. The Hokage himself, his grandson, and the proprietors of the Ichiraku ramen bar were the only people he still voluntarily hung out with. Is this a ninja from the enemy? Naruto is a very strong person, and his recent development was nothing short of amazing. Perhaps another village recognized this and wanted him for themselves. He was also aware of Naruto's secret labeled a bloodline limit, because no other explanation was available. Naruto introduced them to Kakashi when they eventually came to a halt in front of him. With a gesture toward them, he said, "Team 7, this is Trish, and Trish, this is Team 7 in our charge." Look, Kakashi-sensei, this may seem a little strange, but..." Kakashi interrupted him, switching from being carefree to being very serious. Team 7 triangle formation around Tazuna and begin walking. Naruto's voice became more adamant as he protested, "Now." Silently, the three genin formed up and started walking down the street. Then Kakashi looked at the enigmatic new arrival. He gave her a quick inspection. She may not have been a ninja, But her cheongsam showed that she was undoubtedly a fighter. It was obvious from the well-defined muscles and the way the dress was designed to facilitate movement. He chose to get right to the point. She didn't appear to be intimidated by him. "Are you a threat to my students? If you are, I will kill you myself." He spiked his killing intent at her, and she didn't even bat an eyelash. She was cool and collected when she spoke. "I'm merely here for the young master, or Naruto. I am no danger, nor will I hold you back." After exchanging long looks, they came to a silent understanding and started walking in the direction of Team 7 with a heavy sigh. Kakashi pulled out his priceless orange book and said, "I knew having a team would be a pain, but no, I had to pass them because of their alarming potential." From his hiding spot, one man asked another, "Should we attack?" The two men hurried away with as little sound as they could, saying, "No, we'll ambush them later. Don't you see the demons up ahead? Better to not get involved in the crossfire and attack while they're weak." As they left their hiding spot, they failed to notice Kakashi looking up from his book and Trish's faint frown. All around them came the sound of inane laughter. Everyone became alert at once with Trish behind them and Kakashi a few feet ahead. The genin circled Tazuna. Without raising his eyes from his book, Kakashi remarked, "Scarecrows, they're weak alone but strong in units. I think you guys can handle them. Attack with no mercy. They sure won't give you any." Horrible creatures that resembled jesters staggered onto the road instead of an arm or leg. They had enormous scythe blades. When they saw Naruto, they hesitated for a second, but they still attacked. Hardened by their rigorous training, the genin ripped through the feeble lesser demons like paper. Sakura used weapons to eliminate the majority of them from a distance, and if any of them were unlucky enough to approach her, they were slammed with a fist that was as powerful as a sledgehammer. Sasuke moved between attacks, slashing and stabbing with two kunai. The weapons of the scarecrows that missed the Uchiha were embedded in one of their own. Naruto and Yamato have just blazed a bloody trail of devastation. The demonic blade effortlessly sliced through enemies as it danced around him. Naruto could feel his heartbeat in his ears and the rush of adrenaline coursing through him. His movements grew increasingly vicious over time. He desired their suffering. His eyes gradually turned blood red as red began to seep into them. Did these petty demons believe they could defeat him? He would crush them all to pieces. With a great deal of force, the demons were smashed into them by sword strokes that could easily cut through them. Elegant slashes that killed in a single blow turned into ruthless butchering that ripped the enemy apart and caused them to suffer. After eliminating every other scarecrow, Naruto approached the final one slowly before stabbing the creature into the ground and tearing it out, sending it flying a few feet away. He lifted Yamato high into the air and repeatedly brought it down with a crash in agony. The scarecrow writhed. Naruto watched the monster bleed to death on the ground from multiple jagged gashes before he finally snapped out of it. He could still feel the joy of hurting the creature and the power demanding more blood. He felt ill from it. He didn't want to become a mindless killer like them, even though he did despise them. He looked around at the others. Naruto was certain that he had seen the entire thing, but Kakashi had not taken his eyes off that book. Sakura gazed at him as though in awe of his cruelty. The Uchiha had finally come to the realization that the so-called dead last wasn't as helpless as people had claimed. And Sasuke saw an opportunity. Trish, on the other hand, simply observed him. He didn't like how frequently she did that. "Well, you guys coming or not?" Naruto wanted to complete this mission regardless of whether they were afraid of him. The group went by a tiny puddle on the side of the road about a mile ahead. If it hadn't rained for a few days, this wouldn't have been suspicious. Tazuna was the only one who failed to notice because of Kakashi's training. The genin were constantly conscious of their surroundings. The greatest threat was pursued first by two men wearing water masks and horned headbands who emerged from the water. Their spiked chain ripped the Konohamaru to pieces. Since they knew that attack wouldn't defeat the Kakashi, none of the genin appeared to care. Sakura moved to protect Tazuna, while Naruto and Sasuke fought off the attackers. The two adversaries were unaware of what had happened when their chain was cut by a flash of blue, just as they were about to remove the other silver-haired one. Sasuke used a spinning kick to attack a man with a gauntlet on his right hand, successfully separating him from his partner. Sasuke could see the green poison dripping from the metal fingers, and he was struggling to avoid his opponent's swipes since he had lost his element of surprise. "Remember, I need to take action before he corners me. It might work, but it's risky. I'm beginning to take after Naruto." Sasuke gradually reduced the speed at which he dodged. The gauntlet was soon inches away. He was pushed back against a tree. Sensing his triumph, the adversary stabbed him with his claw to have it become lodged in the tree behind the genin at the last second. Sasuke had leapt over the attack. He tightened his grip and delivered a devastating mule kick with all of his strength as both of his hands touched the smooth armored metal. As he came down, it was remarkable that the man's neck had not broken under the impact of the kick that smashed into his face and knocked him out. It was a one-sided battle for Naruto. The boy's attacks were evident as he moved with little to no effort around the man's left gauntlet. This was an unworthy opponent. He wasn't even brandishing his sword, and the older man couldn't even keep up with him. Then he sensed it. Bum, with his heart pounding and his blood boiling, Naruto felt it beckoning him to mercilessly crush his foe. He was surrounded by a drab blue aura as the bandages on his arms started to come off and a blood-red glow gradually obscured his right eye. He clenched his head in agony. The boy appeared to be struggling against something as he froze, head down, and an odd blue chakra gathered around him. When the boy stopped, the older man took advantage of the moment and rode off the blue chakra as a light trick. His eyes widened as the boy's right arm effortlessly stopped his gauntlet. He then tried to escape with a sucker punch, but that attempt was also stopped after a brief moment of struggle. The boy looked up when the man saw those blood-red eyes. Every muscle in his body froze in terror. The boy's voice echoed eerily around him and was deeper. The words, "You are nothing compared to me," came out of Naruto's scornful voice. Naruto gave the Chunin a forceful headbutt. When he saw stars, the man retreated. He realized he was outnumbered and his brother was down. When they cleared, he concluded that a tactical withdrawal was necessary. When Sakura and Sasuke moved to defend him, he threw multiple shuriken at Tazuna, and they ran away. Trish calmly stood in front of the boy, ignoring the demonic power he was leaking, while Naruto just stood there, fighting to control his bloodlust. She approached him, knelt down, and put her arms around his neck, gazing into his crimson eyes. "Master, control your power." As Naruto gathered himself, she sensed the power wane. Trish chuckled as she thought, "You are a constant surprise, young one." She considered letting him go, but ultimately chose to simply move so that she was standing behind him, her arms still around his neck. Her hand played in Naruto's silver hair, but he was too exhausted to notice. The only person who had seen this bizarre scene was Kakashi. Sasuke had been focused on his fight. Sakura missed Naruto's battle entirely because she had been watching Sasuke's fight and he hadn't yet crushed all the fangirl in her. Furthermore, Tazuna was too anxious and preoccupied to notice anything around him. Only Tazuna was surprised when Kakashi came out. "Status report," he exclaimed, turning to face his team. They all responded in unison, "No damage sustained, Sensei." He turned to face Sasuke on the far left and asked, "Good. Now based on combat observation, what have you learned?" Enemy ninja were at least Chunin level judging by skill and had planned attack from the start, watching us and waiting for perfect chance to strike. At being addressed, the girls straightened up a bit. "Enough, Sakura, how were they discovered?" Enemy Chunin were discovered due to their own poor observation skills. They hid under the genjutsu of a puddle even though it has not rained in several weeks, Sakura concluded. The boy was still in Trish's grasp and appeared exhausted. Whatever had happened must have caused him a great deal of stress, but he chose to ignore his abrupt lack of energy and respond. And lastly, who was their target? Naruto. The position of the genin in a similar scene in Kakashi's book bore a vague resemblance, but Kakashi had to disregard it. He tried very hard not to pull out his book to see how that scene ended because it didn't fit the gravity of the situation. They all looked at Tazuna, who was now profusely perspiring, and said, "The target was obviously our charge, Tazuna." The elderly man attempted to clarify his stance, but Kakashi addressed his team before he could do so. After a while, when no objections were raised, Kakashi went on, "Since you handled the attack so well, I'll let you guys choose. Will we continue our mission or abandon it? All those who wish to abandon the mission, speak up now. As expected, move out." Tazuna just stood there in shock as Naruto and Trish from Team 7 walked away. The man only hurried to catch up when Kakashi asked if he was coming. The old man couldn't resist asking, "Why did you choose to help me?" In his own way, Naruto responded on their behalf. Sakura's shy smile and Sasuke's smirk demonstrated that they had similar reasons for not objecting. "Well, quitting would only make us bitches. Besides, we could use a challenge. It sounds like fun," because he could always question Naruto and his new girlfriend about what transpired later. Kakashi was buried in his orange book, trying to figure out how the scene he was reminded of ended. Since it was her responsibility to safeguard the descendant of Sparta, Trish chose not to respond. We witness a short, avaricious man in a pricey suit shouting at another man sitting on a couch in a hideout in Wave. The man sitting on the couch was growing increasingly irritated with his client's whining. "Do you hear me, Zabuza? Your men failed. Since the others didn't, I should kill them myself. I didn't pay that money for failure. You..." The man was interrupted when a massive sword almost severed his head. Ordinarily, it wouldn't be that impressive, but with Zabuza still seated in his chair almost a dozen feet away and wielding the sword, the short man could touch it with one hand. Strapping the sword to his back, Zabuza calmly walked out, followed a few feet behind by his masked apprentice and the demon brothers. "Stop your whining, Gato. I'll just have to take care of the mission myself." "Haku, Guzu, Mizu. Come," Zabuza said. Gato barely controlled his bladder as he stood on wobbly legs, that jerk. He was not one to make such casual insults, so he was furious. Robbery was the price he had to pay them. Forgetting his rage, Gato asked one of his goons, "Is it uncovered yet?" The man straightened his tie and replied, "Almost, sir. The surrounding area is still being cleared. It will be fully uncovered shortly, a week at most." "Good, you can go now," Gato exclaimed with excitement as the man left. "You're going to plead for my forgiveness and I'm going to enjoy killing you when I'm done with you. Zabuza." The avaricious man's wild laughter reverberated throughout the compound. As they sat in the boat that was taking them to Wave, Tizuna had explained his reason for lying. "So you see, that's why I had to lie. We didn't have enough money to pay you, but we need the protection. We're struggling. I have to finish that bridge. It's Wave's only hope to stop Gato." As their boat ride came to an end, Tizuna had just finished. Tizuna attempted to express gratitude to his friend for his assistance, but the man was already making every effort to push his boat as far away as he could. The man was ignored by Tizuna, who said, "Well, my home is only a little ways off. Hopefully we can get there in one piece." Trish fell behind Naruto after whispering something in his ear that no one could hear. As they were walking, they traveled in peace until they came to a big lake where a lone figure was standing on the water, obstructing their way. Well, if it isn't Sharingan Kakashi, it is an honor to finally meet you. How about you step aside and let me kill the bridge builder?" Kakashi lifted his forehead protector to showcase his Sharingan eye and said, "Momochi Zabuza, missing ninja of the mist. Sorry, I can't let you do that." Zabuza laughed. He raised his hands in a seal and began to cover the area with mist, saying, "I was hoping you'd say that. Let's see you try and stop me." Zabuza's ominous laughter was the only sound audible as everything disappeared from view. What to choose? What to choose? Throat, spinal column, lungs, liver, jugular vein, subclavian artery, kidney, or heart? How shall I kill you?" Kakashi was using his Sharingan to scan the dense mist and assess the situation. Triangle formation around Tizuna. The three genin answered right away as Zabuza's intent to kill overcame him. Sasuke forgot his interest in Kakashi's Sharingan. Sakura was paralyzed with terror. Naruto was unaffected by the intention to kill and attempted to hear any warning sounds. This was far more intense than any of their training sessions. In fact, it was more intense than all of them put together. When he blocked the attack, Kakashi realized it was coming from one of the demon brothers. Even though he had heard him approaching Zabuza and the demon brothers were all around him, they all launched coordinated attacks on him. After being sidetracked by two claw swipes, Zabuza's Zanbato found him to save his head. He ducked just in time. Zabuza had already changed his grip, allowing the motion to help with his kick. When the Zanbato dug into the ground with the added speed of the spin, the kick came more quickly than usual and hit Kakashi in the chest, sending him into the lake. Suiru no Jutsu. The water formed a circular prison as it swirled around Kakashi. Zabuza had trapped Kakashi while standing on the water. "Now, to take care of your annoying little genin Mizu Bunshin no Jutsu." A puddle that formed alongside the genin was an exact replica of Zabuza, that is, until Naruto chopped it down. Naruto gave a snort. Turning to his still frozen teammates, he said, "Please, as if a copy could take us down. Come on, or are you too afraid to face us head on?" Sakura did not want to be on Naruto's people to kill list, while Sasuke's fear was replaced by rage at Naruto. "Hey pretty boy, you afraid to break a nail again? Are you gonna help? Pinky snap you ass out of it," he said. Zabuza handed over control of the water prison to one of the demon brothers and turned to the other, saying, "Looks like I'm going to have to teach you what a true swordsman can do. Make sure the other brats don't interfere." Zabuza hurried Naruto. The water didn't even slow him down. "Street," was Naruto's response to his charge. As soon as the Jonin set foot on the ground, the smaller sword held firm as the katana and Zanbato collided in a shower of sparks. Naruto matched Zabuza's strength and fought him back to back. Zabuza used the next sword lock to push the child back when he realized the child could match him, giving him enough time to produce a dense mist. Attacks on Naruto came from all sides. The genin was in the element of the Jonin. The playing field needed to be leveled. His right arm's bandages were ripped off, exposing his devil bringer to the public. To Zabuza's surprise, a transparent blue hand caught his next blow. As the Jonin attempted to remove his weapon, Naruto's devil bringer held tight, saying, "Hey asshole, you got a really fucked up notion of fair play and it's really pissing me off." The boy yelled and drew closer to Zabuza, aiming a sword thrust at his head with only a minor cut beneath his eye. The Jonin was able to dodge in time. Naruto leapt at Zabuza and said, "I need to hold him still so I can free Kakashi." Now that the fog was clearing, he could see Zabuza. He turned sideways and started spinning with Yamato as he flew through the air. Aerial rave. The Zanbato deflected Yamato's slashes, but the attacks did manage to knock the massive cleaver to the ground. To keep the Zanbato pinned to the ground, Naruto stabbed Yamato into it while he was still in the air. Then, using chakra, he attached a kunai to the toe of his boot with his legs slashing out at Zabuza. He started spinning his body with his katana as a handle. He had to change his grip as Zabuza dodged to extend the attack. However, Zabuza was able to avoid every blow because of his Jonin skill. After digging his foot into the ground, Naruto let go of the kunai and pushed off, sending himself skyward. Zabuza trailed behind, his sword now at his disposal. The blades of Zabuza and Naruto collided once more, but Zabuza used his greater weight to knock Naruto off balance. When Naruto used his new attack, Zabuza was taken aback. Caliber. Naruto slammed into Zabuza's Zanbato after bouncing off a tree and using a mid-air streak attack. The following split attack from Naruto knocked the man to the ground, forcing him to drop his sword and dodge it. Zabuza maneuvered behind Naruto to place the genin in a headlock after his katana stabbed into the ground. In response to Zabuza's question, "Hey, what you gonna do now, shrimp?" Naruto took his sword from the ground and stabbed himself in order to obtain the Jonin as well. When Zabuza attempted to flee, the boy pinned them both by driving his sword deeper into Zabuza. Through the pain, Zabuza snarled, "You little punk." Naruto lifted a wobbly devil bringer and hurled a summon sword at Kakashi's guard. "How this?" he asked. By dodging, the man cemented the Konoha nin's triumph. After dragging Yamato out, Naruto staggered away from Zabuza. Though darkness was beginning to encroach on his vision, he could already feel the wound closing. "That fucking hurts." Take note. Naruto gradually lost the fight to remain conscious and collapsed to his knees. He must have underestimated how exhausting the battle was. He last saw Trish's face appear over Kakashi as he fought Zabuza and the demon brothers off. Then everything turned dark. Naruto simply drifted through the night. The blackness surrounding him began to take the shape of hazy pictures and landscapes as he continued to float through oblivion. "We've found it." The voice sounded strong despite its advanced age. Through the haze, Naruto could see an elderly man wearing robes and a hat. He appeared to be a rather weak spiritual leader. Naruto turned to face the stuttering man and said, This is amazing. My lord, do you know what this means?" Although he was built like a fighter, the scroll he was frantically writing on gave the impression that he was more of a thinker. The fog had cleared almost entirely. They were in a big room with statues and other weapons all over it. Some appeared unaffected by the length of time spent there, while the majority appeared worn from years of age. Beside the stuttering man, another one spoke. The man stood straight and tall, and he appeared more honorable and battle-ready than the other two. "Yes, we are one step closer. It is only a matter of time." Naruto assumed the older man was the leader when he approached a sophisticated statue of a demon brandishing a sword. Naruto recognized the statue as that of Sparta himself. As the older man approached, he tore the blade for the statue's grasp. A remarkable feat of strength for a man his age. He gripped it tightly over his head, as though letting go would cause it to vanish. "Now that we have Force Edge in our grasp, all we need is Yamato," the elderly man stated. The old man froze at his outburst and vanished in a flash of speed, saying, "What?" A hand tightened around Naruto's neck. He made an attempt to break free, but the hand held firm. The elderly man leaned closer so he could look Naruto in the eyes and said, "Looks like the little devil is listening in on our conversation. We're coming for you. Wielder of Yamato Rebellion is out of outreach, but you are still young and weak." The old man lost his hold on Naruto as a sudden surge of energy struck him all around him. Naruto could hear Trish's angry voice. "You shall not harm him." He then fell back into a deep sleep, and everything around him faded. By Zabuza's bed sat a pretty young girl with raven black hair. A short man in a fancy suit entered with 2 samurai bodyguards, and her deep brown eyes shot to the door. With his guards by his side, Gato approached Zabuza's bed and said, "So you have the nerve to come back? After you failed not once but twice?" The temperature seemed to drop as Gato approached, and a little frost formed on the windows. The young girl did not move, but her eyes followed the short man. Zabuza ignored the dishonest businessman and stared straight ahead. Then Gato reached for Zabuza's neck and said, "Devil of the hidden mist, my ass. I could kill you right now." Before Gato's hand could reach his arm, the young girl grabbed it. She crushed the bones in his arm, causing him to scream in agony. "Don't touch him, you worm," she said. When the 2 bodyguards reached for their swords, the girl grabbed them by the neck. The girl said, "Leave now or I will kill you." Her voice was harsh and icy. The trio of men hurried out of the room. Zabuza broke the silence in the room. The man lifted his sheet to reveal the concealed kunai and said, "There was no need for that, Haku." The young girl grinned. "If you killed him now, he'd be even more useless than he is now." She was correct, and Zabuza was currently too exhausted to give a damn. Then the room was filled with the demon brothers' report. They knelt down in front of him. Mizu, the younger brother, who had a claw on his left arm, said, "Sir, we've been spying on the enemy. The Jonin is still training his genin, even though he has a mild case of chakra exhaustion like you do." With the claw on his right arm, the other brother, Guzu, went on, "He is preparing them for battle, teaching them more powerful techniques to use." Zabuza paused to reflect. What is their progress? He is adding more ninjutsu to the raven-haired boy's arsenal while teaching the girl more taijutsu along with a few simple illusions. Zabuza's curiosity was evident in his question, and the silver-haired genin with the sword? Few rookies he encountered were that proficient with a sword. He was still recovering while we were spying on them. His battle with you drained him. It was difficult to observe him. He seemed to have a bodyguard. He seems to be the most dangerous of those three kids. He didn't flinch at the killing intent and he was able to defend against me in battle. Haku, I want you to keep an eye on him. You seem least suspicious. The girl bowed deeply and walked away with her new assignment, saying, "Yes, Zabuza-sama." There was another discussion going on in Gado's office. Gado continued to hold his fractured arm. Gado's goons hurried out of the hiding place, shouting, "I want it uncovered. I don't care what it takes, just get it done. I'll force you to pay Zabuza, along with that bitch." A second lackey entered. "What do you want? Sir, the assassin you requested is here." Gado's eyes went wide with shock. "So soon?" The man nodded, and he went on, "Well, what are you waiting for? Send her in." After the man left, a girl with short blue hair, who was probably 16 years old, entered. She was dressed in a more conventional white ninja doji, which included loose-fitting pants and a sleeveless top. In addition, she wore sunglasses, a black mask that covered the lower portion of her face, and black arm guards. She wore the bandages around her ankles, shins, and instep as shoes. She had a spear strapped to her back and 4 black kunai and shuriken holsters tied around her waist, one on each arm and leg. She was all business. "You requested a demon hunter?" she asked. "Yes, I have reason to believe that a local group of ninja is being impersonated by demons. I have no confidence in Zabuza to get rid of those enemy ninja. I need someone. By the way, we haven't introduced ourselves. I'm Gado." Hopefully, she won't be able to tell the difference. This girl was very powerful to claim to be in his fortress. "My name is no concern of yours. I will look into this, but if I find you are lying to me, I will triple my fee. That is if I feel generous enough to let you live. Any details or requests about the mission?" The team consists of 1 adult and 3 children. Each one of them is powerful. Which one of them are demons is uncertain. They are currently protecting the local bridge builder. Do not report back here. When I find they have been disposed of, I will have one of my men find and pay you for your service. The young woman left a smiling man behind and walked out, saying, "Okay. The demons are as good as dead. If I am not paid within 2 weeks of the kill, you will be next. You don't see someone like that very often, so it's unfortunate that I must kill her." When Naruto's eyes slowly open, sunlight blinds him. He saw the bandages covering his chest. His head was pounding too much for him to think clearly, so he tried to recall what had happened. After a few moments, everything returned with a bang. The battle, Zabuza, the mission, and finally the dream. Every muscle in his body was burning in protest. As he attempted to sit up, he was gently pushed back down by a hand. When he opened his eyes once more, Trish's hazy outline was visible. Trish's soft voice calmed Naruto's racing thoughts with the words, "You need to rest, master. You are still weak." As Naruto's body erupted in a series of spasms, the burning intensified tenfold and became intolerable. Naruto managed to gasp out as he fought through the agony. Why does it hurt so much? He felt weaker than before the spasms stopped. Trish remained silent for a while as if trying to believe it herself. She trailed off, "When you stabbed yourself, you unlocked something that was dormant. It caused a jump in your demonic energy, but it also what, Trish?" Trish knew what was going on, and Naruto would be damned if he allowed her to hide the answers from him. Trish let out a sigh. "Your demonic blood has become more potent, master. The power you unlocked by stabbing yourself with Yamato fed off of another demonic energy inside you. Your blood is basically becoming more like that of a devil's. That is why you are weak. Your body is changing to hold more of your demonic power." Naruto pondered the information in silence. He said sarcastically, "So I'm becoming more of a demon. Great." Then he had an epiphany. Just how much more demonic am I becoming? Trish paused to reflect. "When you first pulled on the legacy in you blood, it was weak, but it still granted you Yamato and your devil bringer arm. While the weapons themselves are extremely powerful and the stress they caused you lessened as you trained, you were only able to harness a small amount the power they could provide. But your inner demon slowly fed off a foreign demonic energy inside you, allowing for you to slowly gain more power." Naruto attempted to raise his arm, but it immediately fell back to his side. "Yay, but I never felt like this before. I can barely move, it even hurts to blink. The key was Yamato. Master, when the blade was directly exposed to your blood willingly, it caused the demonic energies in you to accelerate the rate at which it drew on the foreign energy inside you for a short amount of time. The devil blood inside you is now just as potent as the human blood. Technically you're half devil now, but something I find curious is that your blood has also stopped feeding off the other energy completely. Naruto was able to ignore the pain and sit up, saying, "This news just keeps getting better and better," as if I didn't have enough with trying to explain my arm. She attempted to push him back down, but he swatted her hand away. "Master, you need to rest." Kakashi explained, "Your power is something called a Kekkei Genkai, and it is accurate enough for you to avoid unwanted questions." When Naruto realized he was shouting, he subdued himself. "You were there, Trish, they're coming for me. They want Yamato. I need to get stronger." I couldn't even break the old man's grip. Might is in charge of everything. I didn't mean to yell, I just can't stand being weak. You cannot defend yourself or anyone else without power, and I'm not nearly strong enough right now. When he looked at Trish, she could see the fear and pride in his eyes. She assisted him silently from the futon that Tazuna's daughter had set up for them. She informed Yamato of what had transpired while he was away, while she was grabbing him in his coat. It had only been a day or so since he left. Sakura and Sasuke repelled the demon brothers, while the Jonin successfully fought off Zabuza after he freed Kakashi with the aid of a masked ally. The enemy all made it out alive, but Kakashi was able to seriously impair Zabuza at this point. Kakashi was recuperating from a mild case of chakra exhaustion while training the other genin. Naruto's savage glare silenced Tazuna's daughter when she attempted to stop them from going outside. Despite Trish's apology for Naruto's actions, the woman continued to express concern for the boy with the silver hair. Trish stated that Kakashi estimated they had 3 to 7 days to get ready for another battle as they headed to the others. They entered a clearing. Trish was still close by in case Naruto needed it, but he had finally regained enough strength to walk alone while seated close to a tree. Kakashi was driving the others into the earth. After a few hand seals, Sasuke leapt into the air and unleashed 3 tiny fireballs that were directly aimed at Sakura. "Again!" he exclaimed. Sakura punched the ground. In response, a couple of pebbles were thrown into the air. She punched 2 others and kicked one, causing the fireballs to burst. Both genin dropped to the floor. In addition to some scrapes and bruises, Sasuke's body was covered in scorch marks. Sakura had been practicing taijutsu so hard that the skin on her limbs was torn and her knuckles were bleeding. With Trish at his heels, Naruto approached them and clapped. He ignored the genin's gaze as he looked at his devil bringer. Kakashi stood up and approached them. Kakashi gestures for Naruto to explain when he says, "Now that we're all together, Naruto can explain his unique Kekkei Genkai." The genin were inquisitive. Even Kakashi struggled to find even the most basic details about Naruto's abilities. Sighing, Naruto decided it might as well be over with. Naruto took a step back and extended his devil bringer, saying, "I don't know a lot about it since I'm still learning to use it, but what I do know is basically a weapon." A bigger, completely blue ethereal arm materialized over his glowing arm. Naruto spun around as a blue sword sprang from his arm, spinning like a shuriken, and chopped down a tree. It functions like a regular arm, just has a little more oomph, full range of motion, just as dexterous as my left arm, and deadly trump card. I can do anything from pound a boulder to rumble or snatch a fly out of the air without harming it in the least. I call them summon swords. Still trying to make the damn things explode though. It's starting to piss me off. That's all I figured out so far. Sakura was amazed by Naruto's arm, but she couldn't say it surprised her because it perfectly matched Naruto's personality. Whoa, I never knew Naruto had that kind of power. Sasuke now viewed Naruto as a worthy rival rather than the deceased last genin, though he would never publicly acknowledge it. I need to unlock my Sharingan. If he ever uses that against me, I'll need it to be able to keep up. Interesting. Kakashi wanted to reveal his Sharingan and examine it more closely, but the moment was not right. I am teaching Sakura how to utilize taijutsu and illusions, and Sasuke knew ninjutsu he must master. As for you, Naruto, I'm not sure what attacks would fit into your arsenal best. Trish took over. That is fine. I must teach the young master how to control Kekkei Genkai better anyway. Kakashi was still suspicious of this woman. So you know how his power works? He asked. Her chakra felt darker, almost like a demon's, rather than normal. Transcending into the surrounding trees, Trish said, "No, I do not know how his power works, but I do know how to help him to control it. When you are ready, young master, you know where to find me." Kakashi gazed at Naruto below. Just who is she and why is she here in the first place? Naruto? I never did get a chance to question you on it. Naruto knew Trish didn't mean any harm to him, so he said, "She's supposed to be a family guardian from what I've seen so far. She is trustworthy. I don't get why you're so worried about her. Look, My Keke Genkai is getting stronger and she's the only one who can help me with it, you're just gonna have to trust me. Naruto dashed after Trish. The sooner he mastered his abilities, the better. Before turning back to his other genin on the ground, Kakashi muttered, "Alright Naruto, for your sake. I hope you're right." The two genin moaned, "I don't remember saying you could take a break." A short distance from his teammates, Naruto entered another clearing. Trish patiently waited for him in the center. "Let's get started, shall we?" Naruto felt a little uneasy when Trish smiled slyly. As they progressed, he noticed that using his Devil Bringer required less effort, and that things he had previously had to focus on now happened almost instinctively. Trish's training was entirely focused on his demonic powers, and she was constantly offering advice on how to improve his control. She soon left him to continue his ninja training in private, telling him that she felt a hostile presence nearby and that she distracted Naruto too much for him to train diligently by pressing against him, teasing him, and doing many other things that would cause him to become embarrassed. She seemed to take pride in helping him, but she never talked about herself, so even though Naruto didn't know much about her, he couldn't even tell if she followed him voluntarily or if she was just being forced to. He still felt he could trust her with his life. The Sandaime, Tuchi, and Ayame were all precious to him, but their duties prevented them from being with him as frequently as he would have liked. Trish's duty was to be with him. Was he selfish to enjoy her company, even if it was her duty? He didn't care. Being with her made him feel human for the first time since Kairi died. He didn't know how he got so close to her, but he liked having someone. Haku let her thoughts wander as she finished getting dressed, wondering what it was about that genin that had captured Zabuza-sama's attention. Sure, he was skilled, but they had already encountered more dangerous ninja, so they could easily kill him if he posed a treat. What exactly did Zabuza-sama see in this boy? She grabbed a small basket as she left, figuring she might as well see if she could find any herbs to aid Zabuza-sama while she watched the genin. Zabuza-sama gave the silver-haired genin the same look he had given her when he first discovered her, and she realized it while walking to the forest. The idea that he might be searching for another student made her heart ache dully. Yes, she was his tool, but she was still sharp and her skills were still developing. Would he really throw her away so abruptly? She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she reached for her hidden needles, which were left at the base to avoid suspicion. When she noticed a moving lump on the ground, Haku realized she was already in the forest, and she moved instinctively, her body automatically starting to pick the good herbs from the weeds. Would her master forget about her? When she looked more closely, she realized that the boy was her only target. His silver hair was tangled and disheveled, and his coat was off, revealing his well-defined upper body. Haku blushed when she caught herself staring at the boy, and then she saw his right arm, which was covered in reddish armor with blue skin underneath, which was still glowing even though the boy was sleeping. Zabuza would never throw her away, and she couldn't allow her emotions to cloud her judgment because the source of her anxiety and fear was just a few feet away. Unaware, unguarded, she could snap his neck and kill him if she reached out. Fear gripped her heart as those eyes stared into her very soul, leaving her defenseless, trapped, and at his mercy. She tried not to swallow because the blade would only cut deeper. She moved to nudge the boy awake, but as soon as her hand got close to him, his eyes shot open, and she felt a blade touch her neck, not hard, but enough to draw a thin line of blood. She heard the boy say something, and the blade slid from her neck as fast as it had arrived. "I'm sorry." She was stuttering, which surprised Haku. Perhaps it will help her appear more normal. "Girl, unless you want to die, don't come up on me like that." The boy spoke in a reserved tone. "I just wanted to wake you up." The boy's awareness was comparable to her master's, and based on his speech, he wasn't the type of person who made an effort to make friends, so spying on him might not be feasible. "You'll catch a cold if you sleep out here," Haku said, at a loss for words. He walked up the closest tree and dismissed her to continue his training, saying, "Whatever, just don't get in my way." Haku couldn't believe that a boy who could almost challenge her master would so casually dismiss a potential treat. "Hey babe, if you want to watch that's cool, but try not to stare, although I can't really blame you." Haku's face flushed with shame. There had to be a method to win his trust because he would never let his guard down so readily. "In fact, I wanted to ask if you could assist me in gathering some herbs." He landed gently next to her, saying, "My mother is sick, and I'll need a large amount to make her some medicine." Perhaps she could still trick him. "Will you stop bugging me if I do?" Haku simply grinned and showed him the appearance of the plants she required, and soon they were both working to locate them. "So, why did you arrive so early? Since you fell asleep, it must have been difficult." If only she could persuade him to talk. The boy continued to gather herbs without looking up, saying, "I was training." Why? Since the boy had to hold off Zabuza with a bento, she was genuinely curious as to why he was exerting so much effort to get stronger. "To get more powerful. Too much has been lost because I was weak. I'm not going to allow it to happen again." He looked up this time, but he passed her as though he had noticed something that she hadn't. Is there anyone you should protect? He was starting to respond, so she took advantage of the opportunity to probe further. I think you can become stronger than ever when you protect someone close to you, she said. Yes, I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to get stronger for precisely that reason. His gaze returned to her. Why so curious? I lost someone I love, and I never want that to happen again. Do you wish to be near me or something? Yes, I'd like to be your friend, that is if you don't mind. Haku was taken aback by his conclusion and felt her face heat up in embarrassment. How was he able to get this reaction from her so easily? She asked, deciding there was no harm in that. As she began to focus more on Naruto than his actual training, Haku's reports gradually became less detailed. He intrigued her, and they were very similar. She had been honest with him about her past while he listened quietly, and in exchange she learned about his past. She even shed tears for him the night she learned, and she found herself returning here more frequently just to have a conversation with him. Because of the calmness she seemed to exude, her smile, and even the way she behaved, Haku reminded Naruto of Kairi. She was completely unaffected by his attitude and would simply smile at him. Even though everyone would stare in horror at his arm, she seemed to be more interested in studying it in wonder than either Trish or Sakura. As he got to know her better, he found himself opening up to her. In 4 days, he felt as though he had known her all his life, but he secretly feared that she would suffer the same fate as Kairi or that he would be able to keep her safe. Almost fully recovered, Zabuza couldn't help but think about how oddly Haku had been acting at first. She had done his mission expertly, giving specific details about what the silver-haired boy, Naruto, as she called him, had done during his training. However, over time, her reports became less and less detailed, which Zabuza thought might indicate that nothing had changed, but that wasn't Haku's style. Even when there was no change, she explained why. He was concerned about what could have caused her to become more introspective. She also became more solitary, spending her time alone with only her thoughts for companionship. Haku. The apple he was eating was mashed into pieces as his patience wore thin. Normally, she was by his side in a matter of seconds, but every time he called, she took a little longer. Yes, Zabuza-sama. She kneeled before him in her civilian attire, a further shift in her behavior. She wore it more frequently and, despite her constant spying on the Naruto boy, she knew very little about his training. She hadn't even learned about the boy's arm. Tomorrow, we launch an attack. Get ready. He caught a glimpse of her surprise, but it vanished as soon as it appeared. She made a move to go, saying, I will prepare at once. Are you with me, Haku? He asked without showing emotion. Of course, Zabuza-sama. She remained on her knees, staring at the floor. You'll murder for me? After a period of silence, he repeated, will you kill for me, my tool? Yes, Zabuza-sama, I will. She hurried off, saying, good, you were dismissed. He thought he saw a hint of sadness and was about to apologize when he realized he was just being a tool, but he still regretted what he had said to her. Everyone turned to see Naruto grinning despite his physical condition as he staggered into Tazuna's house. After a few more unsteady steps, his legs failed him, but Trish was there to catch him before he hit the ground and led him to his seat at the table, where he slumped into a heap when he saw Trish hovering above him. He waved her away weakly, and Trish sat down next to him. Sasuke and Sakura weren't exactly in perfect shape, and Naruto appeared to be the genin by far the worst. Your back appears to be something that was dragged in. The old man was in a rather cheerful mood due to his recent progress, and Tazuna's remark was kind. Well, I'm not one to talk while being so dirty, but the bridge is almost done. Kakashi raised his head from his book and said, I'm almost well. Tomorrow, all of us will go with Tazuna to complete the bridge. When the young child, Inari, slammed his hands on the table, the joyful atmosphere was disrupted. Why are you trying so hard? In any case, you're going to die. The boy's cheeks were wet with tears. At least we're doing something, you little shit, Naruto said, acknowledging that the child had endured a lot but not giving him the right to treat them badly. We're doing everything we can to keep your grandfather safe while he risks his neck to liberate his house. Your mother is even lending a hand by giving you food and a place to sleep. What are you doing, too? You're crying and stating that there is no hope. Suck it up and stop bitching? Naruto lowered his head once more. Inari's tears only got bigger. Stop talking. You don't know anything about me, but you think you're awesome. You don't need to worry about anything, and you don't know how lonely and miserable my life is. Tazuna and his. Everyone could sense Naruto's abrupt change, even the less chakra-sensitive Tazuna and Tsunami, and Kakashi tensed instinctively as Naruto's chakra spiked, thinking, this might not end well. Trish was the only one who didn't seem to mind at all. You little shit, you want to die? You don't know a damn thing about me, so don't ever compare your life to mine. Naruto's voice was taut and calm, and he looked up to give Inari a glare that made the boy freeze in terror. The red beginning to seep into the white of his eyes, the door slammed behind Naruto as he got up and walked away. Soon after, Trish stood up to follow him, saying, "I will bring him back after he has calmed himself." Sitting quietly outside, Inari observed the waves. "Would it be okay if I joined you?" The boy turned to see Kakashi approach and take a seat beside him. You understand that Naruto simply lost control. He wasn't attempting to be cruel. "Tazuna told us what happened to you, father," the boy said, looking out to the water without replying. "You managed to hit a sore spot he still struggles to deal with. You may believe that your life has been difficult, but it is nothing in comparison to Naruto's ordeal at times. I believe he has endured more hardship than I have, which is quite remarkable. Imagine growing up with nothing, no family, no friends, not even a home," the boy said, looking up in disbelief. "One day, you will receive the one thing you have always desired. A loving mother, only to have it ripped away, causing you even more suffering. He is too strong to give up, though, despite the suffering he endured and everything he had to go through, but instead of giving up and taking the easy route, he continues to fight. He is furious with you because of this. He finds it extremely annoying that you're simply giving up. He simply finds it unbearable that you give up hope when you still have a lot to live for. He doesn't hate you. You still have the opportunity to break free from Gato, as well as your devoted mother and grandfather, but you don't even make an effort to understand it. He is the one who understands your situation the best out of all of us, and he is attempting to assist you in his own way. His heart is always in the right place, even though he may come across as a little rough around the edges." Dusting himself off, Kakashi got up and walked away, but not before calling over his shoulder, "Try and think on it. That little jerk believes I have no idea what it's like." With his devil bringer glowing in anticipation, Naruto repeatedly punched the enormous tree, causing it to splinter and crack as his arm continued to slam into it. Each blow more powerful than the last. The tree groaned as it slowly fell to the ground, aimed directly at Naruto. The ethereal blue arm that protruded from the devil bringer met the falling tree with a slam, lifting it into the air and splitting it in half on its second descent, falling on either side of the half-devil. It seemed to calm the beast raging inside of him as Naruto relaxed into the woman behind him, and just as he was about to begin on another tree, slender arms wrapped around his neck and pulled him into her. One arm stayed around his neck, while the other moved upward and began to play in his silver hair. Trish's voice was firm but not angry, and she added more gently, "The boy is still young. Do not let his words get to you." She let go of him and started to back away, saying, "Come, you must rest for tomorrow. Your teacher is expecting a battle." "That is enough, master. Save your strength for when it is needed." "How exactly do you know that?" His sole response was a cunning grin. "This demon is powerful, but so confusing, and then there is his demon servant. These two will be difficult to defeat," said a blue-haired figure that faded into the shadows as the two left. 3 of his guards entered carrying a suitcase, and the short man with the broken arm sat patiently in his chair. "Is that it? Show it to me." The men nodded. Gato placed the suitcase on his desk and unlocked it. He reached out and opened it, and although the light briefly blinded him, he saw his prize inside. An evil smile, twisted by the eerie light the item gave off, settled on his face and persisted even after he closed the suitcase. "Leave me." The lackeys promptly obeyed when the little man barked. "Finally, I can crush them all tomorrow. They will all pay," he said with a low chuckle that quickly grew louder and eventually transformed into a full-fledged, insane laugh. The light of the sun chased away the night's darkness. The orb rose, casting an orange glow over waves, waters, and forest. If one continued to look closely, they would briefly see the forest appear to be on fire and the waters to be running with blood. One would question whether they had imagined it because it happened so quickly. Perched atop a tree, the man in red observed the phenomenon with composure. He was aware that this was a portent of what was about to happen. The incident served as a test, but would the boy pass? Dante leapt from his vantage point. He fell to the ground, but he fainted in a haze of red just before his feet made contact. The shadows were where the enigmatic assassin waited. She had swapped her traditional doji for something more comfortable, including a black short skirt, high combat boots, and a baggy white short shirt that exposed her stomach and showed off some cleavage. She wore the doji only when she had an official meeting. She did it to avoid lustful stares and to be taken seriously. Most would be deterred by her weapons, but she usually had to give a lesson or 5 to those who persisted. The demon was ready to be expelled. Her spear, Kalina Ann, was strapped firmly to her back without being too tight to obstruct her draw, and her weapon pouches were full. Her opponent was all she needed, but the boy was taking his sweet time. What is he doing? And who are those two? 2 men approached the door silently, katanas at their waists, and got ready to break in. What are they doing? Do they not realize that I have the right to kill the boy? Devils aren't emotional. With no response, Naruto turned around and sighed in frustration. "Come on, Trish." Kakashi-sensei and the others already left a few minutes ago. What's taking you? She acts strange at first, and now it takes her ages to get dressed. At last, he heard the door behind him slide open. About time. What the hell took you so? Naruto turned to face Trish, his jaw hardly able to stay off the ground. Her cheongsam was gone, replaced by a black shirt with a front zipper that hardly held her assets in place, tight pants, high-heeled boots, and wristbands. Naruto questioned whether she was actually his guardian or merely a succubus. He was leaning in the direction of succubus. Based on the cunning smile she was giving him, he averted his gaze to conceal his flush. She approached him from behind and put her arms around his neck. I'm glad you like my new attire, young master. Trish let him go as they both left, saying, let's just go already. With a lazy wave, Naruto bid Inari and his mother farewell. When Naruto approached the door, it exploded open with a powerful kick. The two outside were taken aback by the door. Fortunately, the person wearing the jacket wasn't standing right in front of the door, but the door slammed into his face as he greeted his tattooed partner. He stood there for a moment before collapsing into a heap, his nose broken and bleeding. For a moment, Naruto and Trish just gazed at the man on the ground, while the other samurai were too stunned to move. It was Naruto who broke the silence. Trish, if you wouldn't mind. When the other samurai saw the woman attack him, his mind appeared to reset. He pulled out his sword, but before it could reach its full length, Trish's foot struck the hilt, causing it to return to its sheath. The man's jaw was broken by the sound of the woman's punch to his face. He collapsed close to his partner. Naruto cried out into the house, hey Inari, bring us some rope. When Trish kicked him directly between the legs, the tattooed person's groaning was cut off. Naruto grabbed the person wearing the jacket by the leg and pulled him out of the house. I guess this means they finally decided to attack. Devils aren't emotional. Before long, the two had tied the men to a tree branch, from which they hung helplessly. Naruto let a kunai fly by unharmed. By cocking his head slightly to the side, he looked at the girl who might challenge Trish in the succubus department. Seeing her muscles tense, Naruto said, that's insulting, you know. One kunai? I could dodge that in my sleep? Go ahead and help out, I'll follow shortly, he said, turning to Trish. The two stared at one another as she leapt away. The girl grabbed the spear off her back and charged. She launched thrust after thrust, but Naruto simply avoided all of the blows. Dancing around her thrusts and slashes, Naruto remarked, not bad, I like a fast woman. Even though she attempted to make the attacks seem random, he was still able to avoid them while making remarks about her altercation. Keep your roots strong. Flow with your attacks, stop forcing them. Use your whole body to execute the attack. He twisted around one thrust and entered her defenses. The demonstration of skill froze her after giving her a brief glance. Naruto removed her sunglasses and put them in his pocket. This showed that her left eye was red and her right eye was blue. I could have killed you by now, you know that, right? After regaining her composure, the assassin leapt back and launched a barrage of shuriken at Naruto. He drew Yamato and used a shockwave of power to deflect all the weapons. Naruto stood waiting for her next move while the weapons clattered to the ground. With the blade aimed at Naruto, the assassin maintained a ready stance with her spear. Naruto could sense the chakra being charged into the spear as it started to glow. The girl yelled, hysteric, and then launched a flurry of chakra blasts from her spearhead before they all came together on Naruto. The explosions dispersed. There was dust and debris everywhere as the ground exploded. She noticed the craters left by her attack as it cleared, but she didn't see any bodies. Not even a sign of the body, such as gas, dust, or some liquid, was destroyed. Someone whistled, and she heard it when she turned around. Naruto was applauding her attack's strength. Cool, that is definitely my kind of spear. Naruto simply jumped over it before stomping down, effectively lodging her blade into the ground, but she charged again with a thrust. As she retreated, she sent kunai, each carrying explosive notes, into her wake. She attempted to retrieve her spear, but was stopped by the cold steel blade that was resting close to her neck. The demon with no scratches was at her side. Well, that was fun, babe, but I got places to be and people to kill, you know, demon stuff, said Naruto. The assassin stated in a tone devoid of emotion, so, that's it. You're just going to murder me now. Naruto remained silent. The girl heard the blade return to its sheath after feeling it move away from her neck. She turned to see him staring at her boredly. Why do you sheath your sword? Finish this. I am a descendant from a line of priestesses who have died fighting your kind. I refuse pity, especially from a demon, she said. Like I give a damn. I'm not gonna kill you, but you are going to tell me who you were and why you attacked me, Naruto replied. Eyeing her spear, she said, call me what you want, but know that I will kill you. Naruto turned his back on her and left, saying, whatever, lady, you can barely keep up with me, so how about you just stay out of my way? An uncontrollable anger welled up inside the lady. The boy didn't even consider her a threat. He simply brushed her off. She charged after drawing a kunai. When Naruto heard her footsteps, he turned around but just stood there. Anger clouded her judgment, and she threw away all of her training. The boy was tackled to the ground by her. In the end, she straddled him while keeping the kunai close to his throat. He gazed up into her piercing blue eyes while her hands trembled. She could see the hidden power in his eyes, so he didn't say anything. "Well?" inquired the boy. There was no emotion in his voice, nothing. No anger, no fear. "Demon, why don't you fight back? You all fight back. You all kill. So why don't you?" she said, retaliating with a rear end stab to the ground near his head. Even Naruto did not flinch. He said gravely, but his next remark took the edge off his tone. "You think just because I'm half devil that I'm evil? Let me ask you this then, if one human being is evil, then are they all? You judge without even knowing? Now, as much as I like my position, I need to help my team. Maybe another time though." The woman hurried away from him as she went to get her spear. She said, "Keep dreaming." She was betrayed by her face's burning blush. As she walked back to Naruto, he said, "You following me or something? Of course I don't blame you if you are." Finally overcoming her blush, the lady said, "Don't flatter yourself. I'm merely going to kill Gato for lying to me. Sure, just don't slow me down." Naruto then headed for the bridge, lady following closely behind. When Tazuna and the unfinished Team 7 arrived at the bridge, they were met with a terrible sight. The courageous men who had decided to remain with the construction were dead on the ground. Tazuna rushed to a man who was still struggling to stay conscious. He propped the man up and asked, "What happened?" "Monsters," was all the man could say before he was taken by death. Kakashi immediately became vigilant after spotting the dense fog that appeared out of nowhere. "This was what I was afraid of. I hope my students are prepared." The sound of Zabuza's voice drifted around them. "It's been a while, copy ninja. I see your brats are still trembling with fear." They found themselves immediately encircled by Zabuza clones. Sasuke said before any of them could move, "I'm just eager for a rematch." "Go on, Sasuke." In a flash, Sasuke used 2 kunai to slay each Zabuza. At Kakashi's order they all melted, encircling the group in a ring of water. Together with the demon brothers and his masked companion, Zabuza blocked the escape by standing on the far side of the bridge and saying, "Seems your brats have gotten a bit stronger. Haku, show the boy real speed." Kakashi examined the situation while the person known as Haku and Sasuke exchanged blows. "Were outnumbered, so this is not good. Naruto, where are you?" As he watched Haku use one-handed seals to create a jutsu, Kakashi's thoughts returned to the battle. Hundreds of frozen needs rained down on the two, revealing Haku's Keke Genkai. They were both able to avoid it just in time when the demon brothers' gauntlets covered the masked one's retreat. Sasuke sent out a few kunai, but they were blocked. "Enough, take them out." A burst of red lightning pushed the 4 back as they charged. With her body still crackling with red lightning, Trish emerged from the mist and said, "It seems I can be of assistance." Trish had amazing control over the lightning element when he used it. Even Kakashi lacked that kind of power. However, someone was absent. As she got closer to them, Kakashi asked, "Where is Naruto?" He stiffened at her look. There was still something sinister about her. "Master will join us shortly." Upon learning of Zabuza's schemes, Sasuke charged the masked man, saying, "Well, Kakashi, it seems the odds have evened out a bit. Haku, get the boy. Mizu, Guzu, the woman. The monkey is mine." He was so furious as his attacks were evaded that he didn't notice the temperature was dropping dangerously quickly until it was too late. A series of hand seals was completed in a matter of seconds. With blinding speed, ice reflected off the wet bridge. They surrounded the young Uchiha in a dome. The slaughter started at that point. Trish's fight was a farce, to be honest. She was perplexed as to how they came to be known as Chunin. Despite being commendable, their teamwork was far from unbeatable. It wasn't even funny to fight them one-on-one. It was so pitiful. There was no speed, power, or strategy because of the strong poison. They over-relied on the gauntlets in the hopes of an easy kill. They were able to swing carelessly in the hopes of a lucky hit. Because of this, Trish quickly ended it because it was annoying, to put it mildly. She actually walked all over them, but if you were to tell the harsh truth, you would say, she fucking owned them. She felt a little let down, so much so that she failed to realize they weren't yet dead. They essentially threw themselves at her in a suicide attack. His gauntlet only functioned as a lightning rod, as the first was ruthlessly fried by a volley of concentrated red lightning. However, the other managed to protect himself from the electricity by using his brother's body as a shield. A big spear blade pierced him, shattering his hopes. Trish was just barely spared as the blade sliced through his heart and the front of his chest. After striking him in the back, the blue-haired woman who had attacked Naruto held a shaft to which the blade was fastened by a chain. The woman absently whipped the chain to free the blade that was still firmly embedded in the man's chest. As the chain was retracted into the spear's shaft, his body was launched over the bridge's edge. Trish clearly didn't like interference, and the fact that this girl had previously attacked her master would have made her very angry. I didn't need your help, he was no match for me, even with surprise on his side, in relation to the master. Trish stiffened as if she would have to coerce the information from her. Where is the master? I know you do not have the power to defeat him. Lady froze and looked at Trish. Devil boy is fine, said something about helping out the bastard. You feel that? Inquired the lady. Yes, priestess, I feel it, it's getting closer. Devils aren't emotional. Sasuke was barely able to stay upright. He had multiple needles protruding from him, was bleeding, and was cut up. The masked accomplice was slowly transformed into a pincushion after he used this Kekkei Genkai ability. With 2 Tomo on the left and 1 on the right, he had successfully unlocked his Sharingan eyes. Even though he could see the attack coming, his body was unable to move quickly enough to avoid it, so it was still insufficient. There was no hope. Well, you look like a mess. Did Sasuke notice Naruto? He spoke more quickly than he thought. What the hell's wrong with you? You could have helped from outside. Now you're just trapped. Shut up. Sasuke's tirade was abruptly cut off by the silent command. Just watch and learn. I'm sorry, Naruto, perhaps we could have been friends if things had gone differently. You seem confident, but I won't let either of you escape alive. Sasuke turned to face Naruto and said, well, I'm waiting, give it everything you got. He's crazy. Is he aware of this man's abilities? For Zabuza, very well. From all sides, thousands of needles rained down on them only to have a log take the place of the 2. Then Haku saw that all of her mirrors were pierced with luminous blue blades. What? Boom. Every single blade exploded, destroying Haku's ice mirrors completely. Sasuke, who was still a little shaken from the near miss, watched with Naruto. You owe me one Uchiha. You have no idea how difficult that was to pull off. I'm just fine with the blades themselves, considering all the work it takes to make those bastards explode. The Uchiha had fainted from chakra exhaustion, and Naruto realized he was speaking to no one. I don't think I'm ever gonna do that again. Naruto left a log in range for a replacement because he had everything planned out beforehand in the majority of the mirrors. He installed blades. He had also been able to hold his summoned swords and set them off one master move, all at once. After escaping the explosion, Naruto approached the enemy, who was having trouble standing when the mask he was wearing fell off and the angelic face of a familiar girl appeared. Naruto's shock was evident. Haku? She shed tears as she said, I am sorry, Naruto, I am Zabuza's tool? He looked away and asked, why? Why follow him? At that, Haku sensed the gathering of lightning chakra and asked, he cared, just like you did, isn't that enough? She approached him and said, Naruto, I just have one favor to ask of you. What? MMPPHH. They kissed passionately together. Haku pulled Naruto closer by putting his arms around her waist and around her neck. All Haku wanted was to be with him forever, but she was unable to do so. Her words, maybe if we had met under different circumstances we could have been more, left Naruto stunned as she bounded off towards Zabuza. Kakashi unleashed Raikiri, his signature jutsu. He only needed to strike the final blow after trapping Zabuza with his nin dogs. A figure jumped in the way at the last second, but it was too late to halt his assault. The figure was instantly killed when his attack blasted through her chest with a sickening sound. Zabuza remained motionless. Respectfully, Kakashi released his arm and placed her on the ground. Someone at the other end of the bridge gave a happy clap. The tiny figure of Gato appeared as the mist dissipated, no longer being maintained. The short man with the happy expression on his face caught everyone's attention. It was even stranger that he was by himself. Gato. You double-crossing bastard. Zabuza's monstrous Zanbato dragged behind him as he ran at the man as it sliced across the ground. The head-chopping cleaver left a trail of sparks. A blast of fire repelled him as he leapt into the air and slammed his sword down. Still smoking, he was blown back and rolled to a stop. Gato's voice darkened as his laughter did. Fool, the pitiful one known as Gato is no more. I am Burial and I will rule this world, starting with that village. A woman approached with lightning crackling all around her and declared, he is possessed. Close to Kakashi, where he dropped the Uchiha, Naruto was able to drag Sasuke's lifeless body. Possessed by what? Trish raised her voice. She had been gathering a lot of lightning as she said, Burial, conqueror of fire hell, has taken over him. He needs to be destroyed before the demon can manifest. A ball of red lightning formed above her head as she held her hands together. A ray of red electricity erupted with a thrust toward either Burial or Gato. The section of the bridge it crossed was scorched as it blasted toward Burial. Burial was thrown off the bridge when it struck him with such force. Except for Sasuke and Zabuza, everyone hurried to the edge to see what would happen. Burial was consumed by flames as he fell, but before he could strike, He landed on his feet after righting himself. He did not sink even though he struck the water as his body slowly mutated and burned. He calmly began to walk toward the town. Naruto looked over at Trish. How can he walk on water? He's a fire demon, isn't he? She fell into Naruto's arms and said, yes master, he is, but he is intelligent enough to use chakra for basic uses. Seems that my powers and control are rather rusty. After gently setting Trish down, Naruto stood up and turned to face Tazuna. Where is he headed? The elderly man was on the verge of a panic attack when he said, the only way for him to get to Wave is to pass through the abandoned section of town. It's further down, you can see it from the end of the bridge. Kakashi stopped Naruto, saying, I'm going to intercept him if I can, I'll kill him if not, you guys need to warn the town. Just what do you plan to do, Naruto? Fighting that thing without backup is suicide. That is a high-level demon. He has at least half the power of the one-tailed demon. I'm not going to sit here and do nothing. If I can't kill it I can at least buy some time, maybe weaken it enough for Lady and Trish to take it down. Naruto was already on the run, he thought as he looked at Haku's body. I'll give you a respectable funeral when I return. Kakashi covered his Sharingan and sighed. Lady get Trish, Sakura get Sasuke. Tazuna help me with Zabuza. That kid makes me feel old. Tazuna gave Zabuza a tense look. Move, we got to warn those people now. Naruto reached the center of the deserted city. Where is that holy shit now? The man had changed into a hybrid of a lion and a centaur lion face with flaming bullhorns, 2 wings sticking out from his humanoid back, and a centaur body with scaly flaming skin in addition. He was now brandishing a massive, flaming bastard sword and it was also somewhat impressive that he was now looming over buildings. In the midst of all the abandoned buildings, Naruto stood composedly while Burial leapt out of the water and landed on the shore in front of him with raw power. The demon exploded, causing fire to spread everywhere now. The majority of the buildings were on fire. Burial ignored Naruto and stomped away. Unfortunately, Naruto wasn't easily dismissed after drawing Yamato. Naruto spun around and sent out a powerful shockwave that extinguished all of the nearby flames. Burial pivoted. How curious, the centaur remarked, rigidly staring at Naruto. Burial would have died by now if sarcasm were a weapon. Fire is bad for the complexion. My duck-haired teammate is kinda pale. I'm pretty sure he burns easy. I'm just being considerate. The large creature snarled, there were no human beings like you when I entered this world 2,000 years ago. Wanna make it another 2,000? Silence. Burial summoned Naruto as his flaming bastard sword swept through the air. Naruto just leapt to his feet. He used a building to draw himself toward Burial. Then he slashed at the demon's face with his glowing, ethereal arm. Burial roared at Naruto as he staggered back, feudal pest, you shall suffer the wrath of Burial, I the conqueror of the fire hell. Naruto jumped for another attack and said, wow, your ego is bigger than you are. The only thing that is going to happen is me kick your flaming ass back to that fire hell you came from. Burial confronted him directly with a powerful leap. His legs propelled him into the air, and he spun while holding his sword in both hands. Naruto crashed through a building after the flame blade struck Yamato. Who are you? What? Naruto walked over to Burial and began slashing at the demon's legs. Ignoring the voice, he was almost trampled underfoot when he attempted to grab him. He attempted to grapple with the demon's head while jumping, but he was only swatted away. Fool! My flames protect me from any form of magic you wish to use. After bouncing back from a building, Naruto used a caliber to strike Burial in the face. The boy then let loose a barrage of cuts. Burial's grunted as the flames went out. The larger counterpart was formed by the glow of Naruto's devil brigger. He took hold of Burial's head and slowly pulled the demon along with him into the air. Naruto let go of whatever was keeping him afloat once he was high enough, then used all of his strength and gravity's assistance to plant Burial's face into the ground. The force caused the ground to crack. Naruto's demon bringer had not yet left. I'm not through with you yet. Burial was thrown back into the air by an uppercut, but as he descended, Naruto's devil bringer struck him in the face, sending the demon hurtling across the deserted town. Who's on fire now? Naruto couldn't keep up with what happened next. Burial was first struggling to get off the ground when something struck him and there was an explosion, burning him, tearing him to pieces, ramming him. There was only pain, no up or down, no direction. He crashed into a building, barely realizing that he had finally stopped. Burial was standing in front of him when he looked up. Now his flames were bigger and purplish in hue. Burial was preparing the last blow when Naruto saw it prior to freezing in midair. The sword can be brought down around him. The world dimmed all around him. He heard the faint echo of dripping water. A voice said, who are you? What do you mean, who am I? Who are you really? Virgil, Dante, Sparta, Nello, Angelo. You struggle with yourself and don't accept who you are because it causes you pain. but you need the power it gives. I'm not sure. In front of him, two figures appeared. A regular man in blue clothing named Virgil, and a massive demon in full armor with a sheath on his right arm. They spoke together. You will perish unless you discover who you are really. Who are you? After that, they began speaking alternately. The angel that flies above, Virgil uttered. The armored demon concluded, or the fallen who is deprived. You have to understand your fate and make a decision. We don't stop calling. Are you going to run or listen? They inquired in unison, and they resumed speaking in turns. Remove the mask. The demon bellowed calmly. Virgil said, forget everyone's sneering. Remove your cloak. Forget their mockery. Remove the namelessness shadow, and most of all forget their whispers. Really, who are you? They both yelled at him together once more before falling silent. With silver hair covering his eyes, Naruto gazed down and said, I am both, and yet at the same time I am neither. After the spirits were silent and unmoving, Virgil approached Naruto and said, you are the angel. He then vanished. The demon then approached and said, but also the fallen. He vanished as well. Together, their voices uttered, and yet at the same time neither. The massive demon was moving in slow motion as Naruto fought Burial again. Feeling his strength return stronger than before, his power exploded all around him, pushing Burial back. Stand up, he said, dragging himself from the building's wreckage. He saw Yamato across the clearing, holding out his Devil Bringer, which trembled before responding to its master's call and soaring into the Devil Bringer's open hand. Grasp your sword, he said. Naruto felt the new power pouring into him, and when Yamato touched the Devil Bringer, something happened. The armor of the Devil Bringer changed from reddish to dark blue, and it closed around the blue skin, covering him completely. Before he realized it was he who was screaming, Naruto heard a scream. Scream as you charge, scream who you are. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. As Naruto emerged from the devastation, Burial watched in wonder. His Devil Bringer had swapped out its red armor and light blue glowing skin for dark blue, almost black armor that was more form-fitting and not nearly as bulky. The armor covered Naruto's entire body. The sheath, the armor, and even his sword were now all a part of him. He now wielded Yamato with his right arm and had a sheath on the left side of his waist. His silver hair appeared a little wilder, and his glowing red eyes were visible through the visor-like structure covering his face. But that was just the beginning. In addition to his more demonic appearance, he now had a large armored spirit hovering behind him from the waist up. The spirit was almost transparent, glowed a light blue like the Devil Bringer skin, and held Yamato in his right hand. The spirit had a sheath on its left arm and armor that looked similar, even though his was bulkier. As he emerged from the crater his power had made, Naruto said, if I become a demon, so be it. I will endure the exile. I will do whatever it takes to protect what I love. His voice sounded as though it were being spoken by two people simultaneously. With a concentrated judgment cut and a corresponding blue energy arc from his spirit, Naruto launched an attack that culminated in a huge X, maximum bet. Naruto gave it a nickname. Before Burial's shock subsided, Naruto was on him, bending and grabbing Yamato in its sheath at his hip while the spirit grabbed his on his arm. The flurry of slashes was swift and strong, knocking Burial back out of his enhanced and regular flamed state. Showdown. Burial was unable to defend against the ferocious attack as Naruto leapt into the air, and his spirit uppercut him while he was high in the air. They then delivered a series of slashes and pulled him down, slamming him into the ground. Time to finish this. Naruto hurled the beast into the air, and when Burial landed, he was struck by thousands of fists before the last right hook sent him flying across the battlefield. He stood motionless, and the only sign that he was still alive was his echoey, raspy breathing. The power then left him in his initial state. Your arm, you're not a human. Struggling to raise himself, he said. Avoid asking, what the hell happened to me? Naruto asked, glancing at his arm, but the damn thing still drives me crazy. You are just like he was, and he would be? Sparta. Burial's body finally gave out and exploded, leaving a flaming dead Gato in its wake standing there. Naruto gazed over the demolished town that had served as their battleground. To his surprise, he burst out laughing. So I'm like that Sparta guy. That's fine with me. He approached Gato after getting over his outburst of laughter. Something was being held against the man's chest. He pried it from him and looked at it. It was a brightly burning sphere of red crystal to give it a more exotic appearance. A skull jawbone was used as decoration. The words, Evil Legacy, were engraved in the bottom, barely visible to him. The crystal seemed to be absorbed by his Devil Bringer, which glowed. After that, his Devil Bringer exploded, causing flames to spread everywhere. He noticed Yamato was gone when he looked and saw two gauntlets on his hands. The word, Ifrit, popped into his mind. The gauntlets caught fire, and Yamato went back to his side, Ifrit huh, I'll see what you can do later, for now better get back to the others. Naruto tried to think of a way to explain what had happened as he made his way back to town. It began to snow as he was leaving. After that, the snow turned into rain, which extinguished the fire. So you witnessed the entire event? Thanks for the backup. The tears that fell were obscured by the rain. Dante clattered as he saw the child leave. Not bad, kid. He approached and inspected Gato's burned body in a blur of red. He phased out. Looks like the artifacts are beginning to awaken. This is gonna be fun. Zabuza prostrated himself before Naruto and said, "Kill me boy, I refuse to die by Gato's hand." He had cuts, bruises, and burns all over his body. The cold ground was splattered with warm blood from the fresh wounds. The others observed without getting involved. They were all too weak to turn down a dying man's final request. They were all in the clearing in the forest where Naruto and Haku had first met. They excavated 2 graves. One waited while Haku's body lay in the other. Slowly, Naruto pulled Yamato out of its sheath. The boy paused for a second. "Do it." Taking a deep breath, Naruto strengthened his resolve. It started to snow for the second time that day, and the man's eye lost focus. Zabuza turned to face Haku's body a few feet away and asked, "Haku, my daughter, are you crying?" She had such a serene appearance. He saw the lone tear slip from her eye. The man's mask broke and tears spilled uncontrollably from his eyes. "I will not die a monster." Yamato gave the man a swift and dignified death by puncturing his skin, slipping between his ribs, and passing through his heart before the body hit the ground. Naruto grabbed it with his sword. After carrying him to his grave, the boy placed the body inside. Their graves were marked by Haku's frayed sash and Zabuza's charred sword. With a start, Naruto jumped out of bed and looked around the room. When he realized he was back in his own room in Konoha, he let himself unwind. He observed that the room he was in generally better shape. He was able to make some minor repairs with the wave mission pay. Although the apartment still had a somewhat rundown appearance, he had fixed the roof, the walls, some of the flooring, and even the water heater. "I wish those 2 would leave some hot water now." With a kunai pointing at an extremely uncomfortable spot, Lady, who had nowhere else to go, kindly asked Naruto if she could stay with him while Trish, who was bound to him, stayed in the apartment with him. Now that they shared his apartment, what belonged to him belonged to them, and what belonged to them was theirs. Additionally, Naruto had to acknowledge that most of the time, cold showers were necessary. His hormones went into overdrive when he was around 2 attractive women who occasionally left in nothing but a tiny towel. Most men would kill to be in Naruto's shoes, he knew. Putting those ideas aside, he picked up a towel and made his way to the shower, and I swear they do it on purpose too. After taking a few eyefuls, he developed the habit of knocking loudly, and when he heard no answer, he was ready to enter. When the door opened, the little white towel barely concealed the lady's figure. He had a great view of her cleavage as she leaned down in front of him. She whispered in his ear, "I saved you some hot water, Naruto-kun." Then, with a slight smirk on her face and a noticeable sway in her hips, she left. Naruto had a single thought as he stood motionless. "They definitely do it on purpose," he said as he made his way inside to take a freezing shower. Trish was making breakfast when Lady entered the kitchen still wrapped in her towel. She took a seat and started to eat. Without taking her eyes off the food she was preparing, Trish said, "You should not tease Master like that." After swallowing her mouthful, the lady answered. Trish concluded by turning around and giving the blue-haired girl a piercing look. "You do it too. I don't see why I can't either, aside from the fact that it's fun to mess with him." Trish sat down at the table and said, "I know what I am doing and what the consequences are. You, however, do not." "What the hell are you talking about? What consequences?" "I have noticed Master's more demonic behavior ever since he obtained his devil trigger state. He is giving more lustful looks at females, rebelling against commands from the one named Kakashi, and becoming more competitive with the Uchiha. He will soon seek out to claim more mates, and by teasing him you increase the chance he will go after you," Trish replied calmly. The woman struck the table with her fists. "That's ridiculous. Why would he want me as a mate? Why didn't the demonic behavior ever surface before now? And what do you mean, more mates?" Trish watched with unwavering composure. "Master has finally accepted his devil side and is becoming stronger because of it. That's why the more demonic behavior has surfaced. You are strong and in your prime for fertilization. You would bear healthy children and kill anything that would try to harm them. Perfect mate material. Your daily contact with him has also made him familiar and trusting of you. As for more..." 2 puncture marks were visible when Trish cocked her head to the side. It appeared that they came from sharp teeth. She faced Lady once more. "Master has already marked me as his mate." The venom in her voice didn't even make Trish wince. "No way in hell I'm just going to become his bitch. What about you? You're fine with this? You're just going to let him claim and use you like a slave?" They said. She simply rubbed her eyes and sighed. "I flirted with him when I first met him, But I always knew that I had a responsibility to protect him with my life. We spoke during the mission to Wave, and as I learned about his life, I felt sorry for him, but what really shocked me was his attitude toward me. He asked me questions like, "Why do you call me master?" and "Why risk your life for me?" I told him I was his servant and would do anything he ordered, she said, even though tears were streaming down her cheeks. "I want you to be happy, to live out your life, don't throw it away for me, I'm not worth it," he said, emphasizing that he didn't want a slave but rather a friend. "He has earned my respect and I have accepted my feelings for him," she said, wiping away her tears and glaring at Lady. "How about you?" Lady's face turned red. "What do you mean by that?" Trish was unable to respond when Naruto entered the room wearing his dark baggy black pants and his fully bandaged devil bringer. He stared at Lady's towel-covered body for a moment before noticing the tension in the room. He could almost see the sparks exploding between their eyes as they refused to acknowledge him. "You know, I think I'll just pick up something before I meet the team." Naruto reached for his trench coat and slipped it on before slowly making his way toward the door. His hand nearly touched the door when. "If I prepared a full breakfast, Master wouldn't be eating that unhealthy ramen again, would he?" Trish turned to face him, instantly freezing him in place. Nervously, Naruto started to perspire. "Obviously not, Trish, why would I do that?" "Master does remember that he is only allowed one bowl a week and that he has already eaten that bowl," Naruto said, observing Trish's icy gaze as the gold aura of her devil trigger came to life around her. "Trish, hurry up after defeating Burial. I should at least receive 3 bowls," Naruto remarked as he sat. Trish allowed her devil trigger to fade. Master was only confronted by the original Burial's shadow. The original could have defeated the 3-tailed demon, but that creature only had half the power of the 1-tailed demon. Devils are not on the same level as tailed demons, and the Dark Knight Sparta was strong enough to compete with the Kyuubi. "Yeah, you told me already," Naruto said, stopping his meal in order to imprison Burial and other demons inside artifacts. "That Dante guy sacrificed some of his devil arms." Trish replied, "Yes, that is how you acquired Ifrit." While the lady sat quietly listening, Burial must have been sealed into the evil legacy by Dante using it. One of Lady's questions was, how come Ifrit was used to seal it, but Burial's soul didn't make a new devil arm? Burial didn't have enough soul left to make a devil arm, therefore, Ifrit's mission was fulfilled when Master vanquished him, enabling him to be used in combat once more, Trish replied. Then the lady stood up and went to her room. "Anyway, I'll be back later because I have things to do." "Regarding Ifrit, are you yet proficient in it?" Trish inquired. "Haven't had time with repairing everything around the apartment." "Take action right away." Ifrit has a whole new set of moves to use and the benefit of the fire element. Even though he is not as strong as Yamato in combat, switching between them will confuse any opponent. Even though you can defeat any opponent, there are times when you'll need to use more martial arts techniques than just a sword. Naruto got up. "All right. I understand I should go now. Learn how to use new weapons soon." As he left, he muttered, "Hopefully, we'll have a mission that isn't stupid." What the devil? I would get my own fucking dog if I wanted to care for a bunch of mutts. As you might expect, Team 7 was heading for the Inuzuka compound with the mission of assisting the clan with their canine companions. A task that Naruto was not particularly excited about. With his eye in his book, Kakashi remarked, "Language Naruto, the partners of the Inuzuka clan are equally as valuable as you are, so they must be kept in good shape. The battle can be quickly changed by their combined tactics with the Inuzuka." "I'm not a dog." Naruto was the only one to vocally protest the D-ranked mission, even though he wasn't the only one who was disappointed. The young Uchiha was still upset that the Hokage had claimed that their team was only marginally above average, saying, "We have a lot of D-ranked missions along with an A-ranked and we're only marginally above average." Sasuke retorted, "Stop complaining, idiot." That Uchiha. What was it? Soon. The two were arguing back and forth. They appeared to be fighting all the time now. Prior to the mission to Wave, they seemed to ignore one another except to occasionally poke fun at the other's ego, but ever since then, they seemed to be fighting for supremacy. "You two are behaving like kids," Sakura yelled in their direction. "Avoid getting involved." At the same time, they both yelled back. In addition to letting them argue, Kakashi consistently responded to her inquiries by saying, "They need a bit of competition." She sighed, thinking it must be a macho thing. When they arrived at the compound, Naruto and Sasuke had resorted to simply staring at one another. Although the compound was not as large as the Hyuga or Uchiha, it was still quite impressive, with a dense forest for tracking and hunting on one side of the house and a large open field for training and play on the other. It also looked very clean for a place that housed both humans and dogs. A fresh voice chuckled, "You two look like pups fighting over milk." Naruto and Sasuke turned their attention away from one another and scowled at the stranger. The newcomer was a young woman wearing shorts and a chunin vest, with her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that left 2 strands to frame her face and red fang-like markings on her cheeks that marked her as an Inuzuka member. "Why don't you say that directly to my face? Even though she is attractive, she is not insulting me," Naruto said as he moved closer to the older girl. The Inuzuka girl felt her hackles stand up. "Shorty, do you want a piece of me?" I don't know what it was about this kid, but she felt compelled to show him that she wasn't a weak little bitch, so she flashed her teeth. She was shocked when Naruto suddenly appeared in her face and simply stood there while he yelled, "I am no brief. Why are you all acting this way? I have a slight height disability. I continue to be taller than other people." Even though he was a little taller than Sakura, Naruto was still a little sensitive about his height and found it very annoying when people made fun of him for it. Trish claimed that it was because he mostly ate ramen, but the nutritious food she started preparing didn't seem to be helping him get any taller any faster. Naruto ended his tirade by saying, "Take that back before I put you in your place." Both were glaring at one another and saying, "Try and make me short stuff." Hana, the new woman, who was also an Inuzuka, was dressed in pants, a long-sleeved shirt, and a Junin vest. She had a feral beauty about her, with her face framed by a shaggy mane of short brown hair that gave her an exotic appearance. Kakashi bowed respectfully and said, "Asume-san, Team 7 has accepted the job offer for the help you requested. Yes, whatever you and the Uchiha will alternately walk the pack, so you know the ropes. Kakashi, while you're walking them, I'll be bringing Pinky here, and we'll be cleaning out pins." Sume started to leave. "Hey, how about me?" The woman turned around and gave him a sidelong glance with a hint of hunger as Naruto interrupted his glare with Hana. "Well, you will be assisting my daughter in grooming the pack since it appears that you already know her." Sume then dragged Sakura to the dog pens, with Kakashi and Sasuke following at a slower pace. "Come on, Pinky, we have a lot of work to do." Hana was already on her way to her own destination when Naruto caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of his eye. "Shorty, hurry up, we don't have the entire day," she yelled. "You bitch, I told you I'm not short." Jutsu no Shikyaku. With his sword drawn, Naruto jumped over the claw slash that would have ripped through him and landed a few feet away. With her hair appearing to grow wilder and more spiky, and her fingernails sharpening and growing into claws, Hana bared her fangs menacingly and growled, "You got some balls to think you're an alpha, shorty. It appears that I will be the one to demonstrate to you that you are still a puppy." It would be some time before they would even have to work, as the dogs needed to be walked before they would be still enough to be properly groomed, and the two were alone, with the others having already begun their duties and none of them seeing the struggle for dominance that was about to break out between the two of them. Everything in his vision became more focused, even taking on a faint red hue, as Naruto sheathed Yamato and it was absorbed into his devil bringer. In a bright flash of light he felt his blood start to boil, his canines lengthening and his human fingernails sharpening to match the claws of his devil bringer that had pierced through the bandages. The grass and trees surrounding him seemed to come alive, but all of that vanished from view as he concentrated on the female, his prey. Her resolve steeled as her pride would not allow her to back down now, and Hana began to wonder if she had gone too far. The boy's silvery hair spiked out in different directions rather than laying down on his head, and his eyes had turned red with slitted pupils. His whisker marks also became more distinct and darker. They crouched and started to circle each other on all fours, charging simultaneously, and then engaging in a fierce dance of claws, teeth, and acrobatics in which one would use a series of moves to trap the other for a fatal blow, trading slashes at such a rapid pace that they would appear to be blurs to the untrained eye. Hana's smirk turned to a frown as she watched the scratches on her cheek seal up in a matter of seconds after Naruto overstepped and got caught by 3 claws. She lunged at his throat, but he backflipped and kicked her in the chin, but she recovered quickly enough to prevent his claws from ripping her throat out. She needed to finish this. She leapt over a quick swipe, spun in the air, and delivered a kick that sent Naruto back a few feet. While she landed, Hana was losing ground slowly but steadily, and Naruto seemed to only get more vicious and powerful as the fight went on. Gatsuga. The Inuzuka turned into a cyclone of claws and fangs as it charged. After recovering for a long time, Naruto simply stood there, slowly raising his hands at the approaching cyclone while watching through slitted eyes as the twister approached. Boom! Naruto stood in the deep trenches, his feet left from impact, and he had stopped Hana cold for a moment. Hana just remained there, floating in the air, her wrists held by Naruto's firm grip, before being slammed into the ground. The collision sent out a shockwave that exploded around them. She struggled to free herself after Naruto pinned her, bringing her hands above her head, but she was unable to do so until she felt his sharpened teeth resting next to her throat, and his hot breath sent a chill down her spine. She was afraid that he would tear her throat out, so she remained there, completely at his mercy, her chest heaving for air, and her escape routes blocked. Hana remained motionless as Naruto's teeth left her throat, and she started to worry when the boy started sniffing and inhaling her scent. With one hand gripping her wrists and the other gently tilting her head to the side, exposing the side of her neck to his teeth, Naruto said, "There is no way, he wouldn't." She waited in stunned stupor to see what would happen next. Hana hissed in pain as Naruto bit down gently, being careful not to hit any arteries, but the pain was quickly replaced by pleasure. She let out a soft moan as he pulled his teeth away and licked the extra blood, leaving 2 noticeable canine marks. How would he know to mark me as his? She scurried away in shock when he let her go. Naruto stumbled before catching himself, rubbed his head as it throbbed in pain, and his animalistic features returned to their normal state as the red in his eyes turned back to blue. What took place? He asked intoxicatedly. Naruto's head hurt too much for him to question her, so he followed in a drunken stupor. Nothing, Hana said, covering the mark he left quickly. Hurry up, your teammates should have walked the first pack by now. The Inuzuka said nothing more. It couldn't be Lady. I saw her leave in a different direction than Master. Well, whoever it is, if they hurt Master I will kill them myself, Trish said, having just finished her grocery shopping when she felt a faint presence in addition to Naruto's. The woman did not conceal her feelings like a trained spy would, and the Hokage observed her with interest. She was not from any ninja village, or she would have a headband, particular clothing, or a particular weapon that would identify her as such. Although she wasn't on a high ninja level, she was definitely far above civilian level, as the Anbu guards discovered when they attempted to disarm her. You want ninja training in exchange for killing the lesser demons around town? The old man asked, taking a deep drag from his pipe and exhaling a few moments later. Is that correct, miss? Just call me Lady. Well, this makes perfect sense. However, before we can allow you to be trained in our ways, you must swear allegiance to Konoha if necessary. We can offer housing, but you are still in charge of taking care of the house and eating. There is no need, Hokage-sama. I'm already living with someone. Who, may I ask? The fact that this had been planned before coming here seems suspicious. Yes, with the one called Uzumaki Naruto. This girl must be special to have found kindness in the boy, because if not, not even he would be able to protect her from Naruto's rage. The Hokage's pipe fell from his mouth, and he caught it, but he caught it upside down, allowing all the tobacco to fall out. He placed more tobacco and relit his pipe. Excellent, that seems sufficient. When I find someone to train you and to kill demons if they start to cause you trouble, I will call you. However, be advised that until we are certain we can completely trust you, you will be monitored. She stood up and walked to the door, saying, Thank you for seeing me, Hokage-sama. I accept your terms. No, I should be the one to thank you. Young lady, Naruto needs as many friends as possible. The boy's life has been difficult. Please don't leave him. If you really are his friend, his young brain can only handle so much before it cracks. I would never leave him, the lady said as she went out the door. The Uzumaki boy had worked peacefully with Hana all day after the battle, and Sume and Hana watched Team 7 depart. Their mission had gone well. The Uchiha had only been dragged around Konoha once or twice, and the girl had to get her hands dirty, but eventually she didn't seem to mind. Sume eyed her daughter and said, So, when were you going to tell me that he had marked you as his mate? How did you notice so soon? I thought I covered it, Hana said, reflexively covering the mark Naruto had left on her with her hand. I smell it, but you did. I'd kind of have to be blind to miss that, in addition to the fact that young men and alphas are avoiding you like the plague. The woman wrinkled her nose to emphasize her point. Mother, can you stay away from the elders? Until I defeat him, anyway? The girl pleaded. This is something that should be known. It cannot be kept a secret. However, I'll protect you from them. Those old jerks are losing their sense of self-worth. I'll be damned if I don't rip their throat out before attempting to overrule me because your father left me in charge. I'm grateful, Mom. I simply need time to defeat him. Are you eager to get rid of his mark already? Particularly with a catch this good. Even though the boy is still developing, he exudes an alpha aura. I would have jumped him in front of his team if I hadn't gotten away from him. I'm hoping he would have restrained me. And Mom, you certainly seem happier about this than I am, the young woman said, struggling to control the rising flush on her cheeks. Naturally, it is my responsibility to be a calm and understanding mother. I want grandchildren, anyway. Grandchildren I can spoil or teach how to get away with anything. As Sume continued to babble, Hana's blush was replaced by a massive sweat drop on the back of her head, which grew larger. But mother, Sume interrupted her digression, you don't mind that he's the container for the Kyuubi? Sume just looked at her daughter oddly and said, Are you serious? After pulling pranks, I've heard that kid can outrun the Anbu. Can you picture his behavior in bed? The two women, whose faces could rival a tomato's, thought for a moment before everything fell silent. You think he has a big, Hana thought again, her blush brightening. Certainly have you failed to notice the presence of Hyuga women around him? Sume smiled mischievously and added, they also talk in the hot springs, they're always blushing with their keke genke activity. That time already? Kakashi asked, looking up languidly from his smug book to the messenger bird soaring above Team 7 had just returned to town. All right, team, I have to turn in my mission report, so that's enough for today. Even though your teamwork has been a little weak lately, I've been working you guys so hard that I'll give you guys a break. Kakashi vanished in a cloud of smoke. Would Naruto want to spar with Sasuke-kun? I want to test a new genjutsu, she said, fluttering her eyelashes at Sasuke. The Uchiha looked expectantly at Naruto and said, I'd rather spar with Naruto. He was eager for an opportunity to use his Sharingan against Naruto. The Uchiha gritted his teeth in frustration and said, as tempting as it is to pound you into the dirt, Teme. I have plans today. You can leave Konohamaru as well. After emerging from their hiding spot in the bushes, the young boy with two other kids following him said, Naruto, you didn't even give us a chance to sneak up on you. As the Uchiha turned to leave, Sakura yelled, Sasuke, I can spar with you. No, the girl felt a twinge in her chest and thought, perhaps I should just give up on him. The Uchiha didn't even turn around. Konohamaru, who are your friends? Sakura turned to see Naruto chatting with the three newly arrived kids. A girl with red cheeks, a boy with a long scarf, and a boy with a runny nose. And together we are your rivals for the Hokage's seat. Konohamaru pointed to his friends and said, this is Udon and Moegi. They made a strange pose together. Naruto said, bored, okay, so you got help, yes, and we will undoubtedly beat you in a ninja game because we are 3-1 stronger than you. Oh, I guess I did keep my promise to play today. Okay, you have 5 seconds. Naruto counted down while extending his hand to reveal 5 fingers. Run, run. Naruto calmly started to follow them as Konohamaru took off, blasting around a corner with the other two following. What sort of ninja engages in ninja play? Sakura, who was walking next to him, inquired. Sakura, they're children, all they want is to enjoy themselves while honing their abilities. Sakura held her head in shame at Naruto's stern remarks. What are you doing playing ninja? You've become more serious about your training, but you still fawn over the Teme when you could be practicing. Watch where you're going, you brat. The two noticed a man with paint on his face clutching Konohamaru by his scarf as they rounded the bend. The blonde girl next to him said, cut it out, Kankuro. Tamari, the little shit hit me first. Looking back at Konohamaru, he said to his sister, well, won't you apologize? Hey Konohamaru, aren't you a ninja? Act like one now. Have you forgotten what I previously taught you? Konohamaru looked at Naruto and got a slight nod. When Konohamaru's foot slammed into Kankuro's chin, it was enough to stun the boy, causing him to release his hold, allowing Konohamaru to twist out of it and kick Kankuro again in the temple. You brat, you little Konoha, I'm going to kill you. By the time Kankuro got back up, Konohamaru, Udon, and Moegi had already rushed behind Naruto. Naruto had better things to do now, but Yamato was drawn and pointing at Kankuro. You're wasting my time, you makeup-wearing freak, he said. Deal with the fact that Konohamaru beat you. Try picking on me, tough guy. If you still want to be mean to someone, you're already dead if you move, so don't worry. But I would have noticed if he did something like this, Kankuro said, feeling the point of a sword press against his back and becoming aware of the two blades crossing in front of his neck. He followed the swords and saw 3 identical copies of Naruto wielding them, one on each side and one behind him. His left, Naruto said, go ahead, move, we dare you. His right, Naruto said, you'll be dead before you can even think of moving. Finally, the one behind him said, we even know about your toy, and it won't stop us from killing you. Kankuro had set up charka strings to divert the clones' attention while they were talking, but when he tried to use them, he discovered that they were all severed. When Tamari saw her brother's predicament, she went to assist him, but was stopped by 2 powerful arms encircling her waist. She saw that she had been stripped of her fan, and her legs went weak when the person holding her blew on her ear. I don't like to fight women, especially hot women, Tamari said, even though her mind was screaming for her to control herself. Tamari melted into him and said, don't worry, I won't kill him, relax. As Kankuro frantically searched for a solution to his predicament, Naruto to his left side and said, look, I'll make it simple for you, you're fucked. I had backup in that tree over there. Even if you manage to escape me and recover in time for an attack, we can forget this entire incident ever happened if you just say a few simple words. Sasuke sat on a tree branch and watched the show. Turning his head carefully to avoid severing his own neck on the blades, he saw Naruto was right. Say what, exactly? Naruto laughed. Say you're a loser who wears his sister's makeup and picks on little kids. What? No, he was reminded of his location by a rather sharp jab in his back. He gritted his teeth in rage and glanced around for what felt like the 100th time. He hung his head in shame and muttered something under his breath. What was that? Naruto uttered the innocent words, I didn't quite hear you. I'm a loser who picks on young children and applies his sister's makeup. I said it there, now let me go. The original stood in the same spot in front of the three children with his sword back in its sheath, while Temari was released and placed gently on the ground because her legs were unable to support her and her mind was still foggy. The Narutos around them went up in smoke as they said, see how easy that was. Sakura, Sasuke, Kankuro, Temari, and the children behind Naruto's leg were all taken aback to see a girl standing a few feet to Naruto's right. You're quiet, that's for sure, but you need to work on hiding that bloodlust. With crimson hair that fell to her shoulders and the kanji for love on the left side of her forehead, she was about Naruto's height. Her clothes partially concealed her full figure, and she looked up to gaze at Naruto with dull green eyes while clutching her head in agony. Why is mother so desperate for your blood? She begs for your demise. The girl managed to gasp out. She seemed to calm down. Her pain passing, she was able to focus on Naruto. What is your name? Yours, Uzumaki Naruto. She was about to respond when she grabbed her head once more and muttered something along the lines of, no, not now, don't come out now. She froze, then looked around wildly before looking up at Naruto in fear. NYU? With courage, she inquired, NYU? Naruto inquired. The girl's fear vanished at the mention of her name, and she approached him, staring into his eyes as her hand timidly cupped his face. Naruto's eyes briefly turned red before he suppressed his instinct. Enough. Gaara. A man with a cloth covering the left side of his face stood between Kankuro and Temari, who had picked themselves up off the ground to watch Gaara closely, and NYU looked between Naruto and the man, not knowing what to do when the man reached into his pouch for something. NYU hung her head and walked to Temari, who was hiding behind the girl. The new voice startled Gaara, or NYU as she called herself, out of her daze. After ensuring NYU was not leaving, the man said, my name is Baki, and I have to apologize for the actions of my team. He studies the three genin, Naruto standing in front of Sakura, Konohamaru, and his friends, and then turns to Sasuke in the tree. He had observed how they easily cornered his team, whether on purpose or not, and he added, we look forward to facing such skilled opponents, such as yourselves. The man then turned around and said, let's go, there are things I must discuss with you. He vanished in a cloud of sand, followed by Kankuro and Temari, who took the girl gently and followed last when it didn't seem like Gaara was going to leave. Things are getting interesting, said Sasuke as he leapt from the branch he was on and headed for the closest training ground. Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to catch you another time, Naruto said, turning to face Konohamaru and his companions. It's okay, boss. The other two nodded wildly, as if they were still a little shaken by the encounter. You have to get stronger to beat up guys like that makeup-wearing guy. Naruto yelled as he followed Sasuke. Hey Uchiha, I think I'll accept that offer to beat you to the ground. Naruto went on without even looking back, saying, come on Sakura, we have work to do. The girl rushed to catch up. 3 more ninja were in a different tree, and they could be identified by their headbands. You believe they were fortunate? The one who appeared to be a mother inquired. Perhaps, but they're not to be taken lightly. Pay close attention to those named Naruto and Gaara, the girl advised. The spiky-haired one remarked, I still don't get what Orochimaru-sama sees in that Naruto kid. Yeah, he's good, but we're better. Do you truly doubt him, and don't mention his name? Mummy said. The boy with the spiky hair leapt away after saying, whatever, I could still kill him. Do you think he could kill him? The girl's mother asked. She continued to watch Naruto leave, examining every action he took. Not a chance. It would probably take all 3 of us to take this guy down. They also leapt before their teammate Naruto was taking advantage of it, clapping and waving as though a crowd was watching their fight and they weren't making enough noise. Come on Sasuke, you've been bragging on those eyes of yours ever since you got him and I'm still walking all over you. He said. Sakura laughed beneath a nearby tree at him. Sasuke's clothing was torn and ragged in addition to having a few bruises and cuts that were bleeding. He was otherwise unharmed. Naruto was naked from the waist up after discarding his weighted coat. His devil bringer was out in all its splendor, and his sheath had been moved to his back. Naruto had discovered a weakness in his Sharingan that should make it impossible. Naruto had no trouble countering and landing a few solid blows when his sword style was more conservative and accurate, but now they were essentially at a standstill. Neither was able to land any solid blows. His movements were unpredictable and unconventional. Sasuke's eyes were unable to accurately foresee the next move. The most terrifying aspect was that, despite the fact that the attacks were unplanned, they all flowed together flawlessly. Kicks and punches could come from anywhere. It seems to be instinctual. With Naruto's back to him, Sasuke threw 3 kunai before hurriedly removing 2 more and rushing the silver-haired boy. Dodging 2. Naruto used his Devil Bringer to catch the final one before smashing it into scrap metal. Dropping it, he kicked out at Sasuke's kneecap while bending backwards beneath the initial slash. The Uchiha threw one of his kunai at Naruto's face as he leapt over, spinning. Naruto released the weapon back at Sasuke after turning his head slightly and catching it in his teeth. After catching the blade in a backhanded grip, Sasuke stabbed Naruto with both blades, but Naruto flipped him over and stopped his attack. After landing on his hands behind Sasuke, Naruto spun around and kicked out quickly. When the attack broke Sasuke's guard, he was kicked in the stomach, which caused him to skid a few feet away. Sasuke's hand seals flashed. Kaden. Hosenka no Jutsu. He enraged Naruto with 3 fireballs. Yamato and Naruto were already on their feet. Shuffle, he exclaimed. After avoiding the first 2 by taking a step back, he moved forward and slashed upward right in front of him. Yamato easily sliced through the flames, causing 2 of them to burst behind Naruto. Yamato sent out a blue shockwave as Naruto sliced through the air. Judgment cut. Sasuke narrowly escaped the assault, landing right in front of Naruto on the other side of the clearing. Hey, Teme, Naruto said, challenging them to see who could save the better finisher. Sasuke merely grinned. I'm gonna have to warn you though, I got this idea from Wave after Haku. Although Sasuke was a little concerned, he was determined not to give up. Sasuke had discovered this in the Uchiha scrolls, and after reading the description, he continued until he could execute it. Whatever Dobi, it took me a while to get this right, but I think this is the perfect situation to use it. You ready, Uchiha? Inquired Naruto. It was not heard when Sakura pleaded, come on guys, just call it a tie. You both shouldn't use those kinds of moves in a spar. When Sasuke's grin returned, he said, on the count of 3. 1. Naruto uttered. Each took a stand after sheathing Yamato. Naruto placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and started to concentrate chakra into it. As he started to gather chakra and visualize his move, Sasuke clapped his hands together. 2. Sasuke uttered, focusing hard to muster enough chakra. As Naruto's concentration grew, perspiration trickled down his face. Sasuke carefully went over each hand seal to avoid making any mistakes as it struggled to be released. Yamato's sheath started to glow and chakra could be seen leaking from the blade inside. 3. Both launched their assault at the same time. Kaden. Karyu Enden. Sasuke's mouth burst into red-hot flames, directing a dragon-shaped flame towards Naruto. The ground beneath the flames was scorched, leaving a trail of fire in their wake. Yamato called out, "Slash Dimension," and briefly emerged from its sheath before clicking back in. Many slashes surrounded Sasuke at the sound of the click, entangling him in their web. While the cuts in the air surrounding Sasuke exploded all around him, the dragon of flames collided with Naruto and exploded. Sasuke. Naruto. Sakura was startled by 2 moans and spun around with his foot buried in their backs and their faces buried in the ground. A Kakashi restrained both Sasuke and Naruto. The 2 were probably unable to move in any case because they were either experiencing chakra exhaustion or were at the very least recovering from using so much chakra at once. Kakashi's voice was full of anger as he exclaimed, "What the hell were you 2 thinking?" Through the dirt, Naruto managed to say, "We were sparring." Sparring? You call that sparring? It looked like you 2 were out to kill each other. Both those attacks were high level, probably capable of taking out a Jonin, and you used them in a sparring match? I was able to feel the chakra being gathered all the way from the Hokage's office. Kakashi breathed a sigh of relief, and both of this was going to occur. The statement, "I had recommended all of you for the Chunin exam, but after this I will withdraw my recommendation unless," simply surprised me by how quickly it had spread. Sakura and both boys' eyes widened in surprise. Sasuke raised his voice, "Unless what, sensei?" "The exam is 2 days from now. The only way you're getting in is if you train with me until I let you go. What I have put you though so far was nothing compared to what I'm going to make you do. Do you accept these terms?" They both grinned. Kakashi gave her the Chunin exam form, but when the girl hesitated, he locked eyes with her and expressed some intention to kill. "Go home, Sakura. I'm exempting you from this mostly because you might die halfway through." "That's an order, Genin." Sakura scurried away as quickly as she could, saying, Why yes sir." "Now that's done," he said, taking a quick glance around the training area with trees, water, and large boulders. It was appropriate for all uses. He looked back at the two boys who were still lying there. I am going to test every damn thing you know, and I will teach the hard way. Listen, and you might learn something by the time I'm done with you too. This whole training field will be watered with your sweat. Welcome to hell, boys. The torture then started.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.